Chapter 40. Amazing. In the world I lived in, it's impossible for a youth of the same age to reach this level. His attacks are so natural and smooth. If it was an ordinary enemy, they would have died in Cass' hands. This was the first time Han Dong had seen the strength of an apprentice knight. After being shocked, Han Dong yearned for this kind of destiny power even more. Cass, who had invested 3 destiny points in a crusader as his main talent, had a combat strength far surpassing his physical strength. The strength of his physical body combined with his fighting skills far surpassed the limits of a normal person of the same age. He sent the ghoul, which was taller than him and had more developed muscles, flying away. Then, he perfectly connected with the ghoul and continued his combo. However, ding! The crisp sound of metal clashing echoed in the basement. The instant he used the cross slash to break open the ghoul's chest, he immediately stabbed at the heart. Who would have thought that the sharp tip of the silver sword would be blocked by the black substance surrounding the heart? A fully mature ghoul has formed bone armor at its weak points? At the same time, Han Dong made his move behind him. A wave of plague energy accurately shot at the bone armor around the chest. At a speed visible to the naked eye, the plague was slowly corroding the black interlayer that covered the chest. Cass smiled and prepared to stab a second time. Who knew? The ghoul, who had fallen to the ground and had its chest torn open, ignored its injuries and bounced up with a burst of energy from its waist. The sharp claws created sparks on Cass' armor, and the powerful force even sent Cass flying. Bang! A dull sound of impact. Cass crashed heavily into the wall, and traces of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. 5 scratch marks were left on the armor in front of his chest. The middle scratch had completely torn the armor apart and scraped the skin on his chest. In a few seconds, the wound had turned green and pus flowed out. Furthermore, due to the confrontation with the ghoul during the battle, the black lines on the black lines had become darker. The black lines around Cass's eyes had deepened in color. Problems had appeared in his thinking. Sometimes, he would see terrifying illusions. His battle would be greatly affected. Han Dong frowned. The situation had become unfavorable for them. This knight Cass was an upright person and was not scheming. Previously, when he smelled danger in the secret passage, he let Han Dong stay in the central region and explored alone. Just this alone was enough to show Cass' character. Cass, don't move. Your physical activity will accelerate blood flow and carry the fungus to other parts of your body. If possible, try to burn the wound with fire to remove the fungus. But you can't deal with this thing. I must. Don't move. I have an idea. Han Dong's roar shocked Kars. He did not expect a weak, mysterious apprentice to be able to make such a bold roar. Han Dong stared at the ghoul, or more accurately, at its chest. The plague attack had already taken effect, and the bone armor protecting its heart had been greatly weakened. Han Dong's roar attracted the ghoul's attention once again. The battle had to be settled here. Otherwise, once Cass was left behind, he would definitely be eaten clean. Aku. Strange words came out of the ghoul's mouth. The ghoul quickly crawled over, its claws easily cutting through the cement floor. Han Dong calmed himself down and steadied his mind. He pointed the dagger at the ghoul's eyes. As a portion of the energy in the brain was extracted, a ray of plague energy accurately hit the ghoul's eyeball. It lost its vision. This caused the ghoul's attack to deviate. Han Dong dodged in a direction, just in time to avoid the attack. The ghoul that missed its target crashed into the pile of junk in the basement due to inertia, and its body was buried by the junk. Good chance. When Cass saw this, he wanted to help, but a strong tearing sensation came from his chest, causing him to gasp for breath with one hand on the ground. He could not exert any strength at all. At this moment, Cass, who was already seeing double, saw a terrifying scene. A woman in red clothes had appeared beside Han Dong without him noticing. This woman was wrapped in a layer of viscous evil aura, and the kitchen knife in her hand was a direct threat to Cass. What is this? Is this a terrifying illusion I'm seeing? Or is it Andwa's summoned creature? Just as Cass was puzzled, the woman in red moved. She was extremely fast. Before the ghoul could crawl out of the pile of junk, the kitchen knife in her hand fell rapidly. How should he put it? Chun-Li, who was wielding the kitchen knife, felt like a berserker. Looking from afar, the blink shadow of the first knife had not disappeared, and the second knife was quickly chopped down. Even Han Dong was very surprised. Chun-Li in the Destiny realm did not have this kind of level. Is this the ability of the Holy Grails to increase one's ability? Combat ability just went from E+ to D-, and the increase is already so big. In a short period of time, the kitchen knife cut off all the ghoul's limbs. At the same time, an iron chain found in the basement was used to strangle the ghoul's neck, so that the fangs in its mouth could not be a threat. The final attack would be delivered by Han Dong. The bone layer of the heart in its chest had been completely corroded. The dagger was aimed at the heart and accurately pierced it. Ah! A strange cry echoed in the basement, and even the security personnel guarding the building heard it. After the ghoul's body twitched a few times, it stopped moving. Han Dong quickly took out a syringe and extracted the cell essence of the mature ghoul in a blind spot where Cass could not see. He then quietly moved one of the ghoul's arms into the brain space. Cass, whose vision was blurred due to the pain, did not see all of this clearly. At the same time, he was also immersed in the shock of Han Dong killing the mature ghoul, and did not notice Han Dong's subsequent little tricks. Andwa, you are amazing! Didn't I tell you not to move? The infection has stopped? After doing all this, Han Dong looked at Cass. The infected wound on his chest had been completely disinfected. As for the disinfection tool, it was a holy water bomb. The holy water inside had a great restraining effect on the gloomy fungus brought out from the graveyard, and the effect was better than fire. However, Cass was still slightly weak, and he slowly recovered after resting for a while. This is your summoned creature? I've only heard of those guys who majored in control. Being able to control evil spirits, summon wild beasts, or establish a connection with the void. I didn't expect mysticism to be able to do so as well. Just an unexpected gain. Since Cass said so, Han Dong could only go along with his idea and hide it. No wonder your body is so weak, yet you still have 2 fate points allocated to mysticism. Looks like you used them all on strengthening your summoned creatures. Impressive. While they were talking, Chun-Li seemed to be afraid of strangers. After asking for Han Dong's permission, she quietly returned to the prison. Cass had seen many similar scenes of summoned beasts disappearing, so he wasn't surprised. Go. We need to report the matter of the ghoul lair to our superiors as soon as possible. Otherwise, this civilian district will be in big trouble. Cass quickly took out a burlap bag and put away the corpse of the ghoul as evidence for completing the bounty. Why is it missing a hand? It must have been corroded by the plague energy, Han Dong said softly. That's true, this is a weapon of fate. Cass didn't have any suspicions as he carried the burlap bag and left the basement with Han Dong. Not long after, professional knights arrived and completely destroyed the small ghoul lair in a short period of time. As Cass discovered and reported the ghoul lair, his bounty mission was rewarded with an additional 50%. Chapter 41. 50-50. Initially, when they were temporarily recruited, it was set at 70-30. During the mission, Han Dong had made the correct inference that there was an escape tunnel in the basement. Thus, Cass had increased the share to 40%. Later on, with Han Dong's help, only one ghoul was released. With Han Dong's unique ability, the ghoul was killed. After submitting the bounty mission, Cass Maldini gave Han Dong half a bag of copper coins at the entrance of the church. So much? Han Dong was a little surprised. There were at least 100 copper coins in the bag. If it weren't for your help, Andwa, not only would I not have been able to complete the mission, but my life would also have been in danger. This is what you deserve. Also, according to your request, I only mentioned my name when I submitted the mission. Cass didn't ask too much about why Han Dong deliberately hid it. After all, everyone has their privacy. Cass guessed that Han Dong had snuck out. If the Academy found out, the bounty would be white-collar. Okay. Han Dong didn't know the value of the half-bag of copper coins. Friend Andwa, is your summoned creature the contract-signing type or the mind-control type? It's so powerful. The former. It seems like it's not a coincidence that you obtained a weapon of destiny. Can you leave a way to contact me? In the future, if there are any bounty missions that need to be completed in a team, or when it's an important moment of destiny, I can do it with you. Although I was injured when dealing with the ghouls, I'm still very powerful when I'm serious. It wasn't that Han Dong didn't want to form a team. To be able to get to know a crusader who had already been allocated 3 fate points was very good for Han Dong's future development. However, Han Dong didn't know how to answer this question. Contact information naturally represented the means of communication in the current era. However, according to normal history, the means of communication in the Age of Steam were still at the stage of paper letters. Telegraphs only appeared at the beginning of the Second Industrial Revolution. Han Dong had asked Nina about this. The result was that electricity didn't exist in the Holy City. Therefore, telegraphs naturally didn't exist. They were still using radio communication. However, the means of communication still existed. In this special era, the supernatural and steam technology collided head-on. Humans in the apocalypse developed an alternative means of communication. Let the copper piece and the gear cooperate to output the relevant signal. Through the precise formation to identify the signal and transmit it, it could achieve timely transmission and directional transmission. It was equivalent to a communication product produced by the combination of magic and metal. Han Dong had no idea what he looked like. Just as Han Dong did not know how to answer contact, Cass used his index finger and thumb to buckle the clockwork mechanism on his wrist. The clockwork mechanism, which looked like a watch, began to creak. Folding and unfolding. Intricate copper keys appeared from the inside, allowing the clockwork mechanism to derive an operation panel similar to that of an old-fashioned mobile phone. The 1 to 9 copper keys had a touch similar to that of a typewriter. Han Dong immediately did as he was told. Sure enough, the clockwork mechanism also gave birth to a control panel. At the same time, at the bottom of the clockwork mechanism, a series of numbers was generated, which was the machine's number. In this way, the two exchanged numbers, and Han Dong was officially acquainted with an apprentice knight. At least from the ghoul incident, it could be seen that Cass Maldini was a good person and worth befriending. That's it. I have to hurry up and repair my armor. If there's anything in the future, we can contact each other anytime. Okay, bye. To be honest, Han Dong, who had just escaped from the Destiny Realm, had not had time to study the clockwork mechanism. Currently, he stared at the clockwork mechanism for a long time and felt that it was a masterpiece. There might be other ancillary functions, which would be activated when Han Dong became an apprentice knight. Let's go home. Han Dong used his identity as an apprentice knight to set off from the church. He passed through the Moslabi River, which was guarded by sentries, and returned to the familiar civilian area of Samar. Nina had already registered as an apprentice knight in the Public Security Bureau. Their family would not be restricted by the mandatory rules of this area, and they could move out of the slums at any time. As soon as Han Dong returned home, Nina immediately hugged him tightly. Nina pounced on him and hugged him tightly. She was so excited that she couldn't speak clearly. After all, Han Dong had brought great changes to the family. Brother, did you know? After you were taken away, Sheriff Dace personally came to apologize and gave us 5 copper coins. Now we don't have to worry about food anymore. Is 5 copper coins a lot? A lot. Mom works outside for a year and only earns 10 copper coins. When I follow Master, he'll occasionally give me a copper coin at the end of the month when he's in a good mood. Oh. Han Dong directly placed the sack in his hand on the table. Hearing the sound of metal colliding coming from the sack, Nina's body swayed. Han Dong said with a normal expression, "You and Mom can use this money. When the time comes, if you want to move to the other side of the Moslabi River, you'll probably need new furniture, right?" Nina did not say anything. Instead, she slowly approached the sack and opened it to take a look. Nina had never seen so many copper coins before. She could not even dream of having so many copper coins. She stood there in a daze, unable to say a word. Even her eyes had become a little unfocused. After waiting for half the night, Nina stammered in a low voice. "Brother, did you use the power you obtained to rob? Don't worry. I got the money through normal channels." How much money is this?" "I don't know. I didn't count it. Anyway, just keep it well. If I have any financial needs, I'll ask you for it. As for the rest, you can do whatever you want." "Brother." I. Nina was so anxious that she was about to cry. "Count how much money there is first. Just keep it well. When we move to the other side of the Moslabi River, we'll take it out and use it." I got it." Nina held the sack and looked around, afraid that strangers would discover this huge sum of money. Then, she quickly walked to the bedroom she shared with her mother. First, she counted the huge sum of money one by one. Then, she put the sack at the bottom of the wardrobe. As for Han Dong, he returned to the bedroom alone, closed the door, and locked it. When it was time for dinner, Nina would naturally come to call him. Han Dong was not too concerned about the copper coins. Since he could obtain it through the bounty mission, there would be plenty of opportunities in the future. What Han Dong cared about was the unexpected gain, this time. The ghoul incident this time was not as simple as obtaining the bounty. Han Dong also obtained the cell essence, a complete and mature ghoul arm, and the books related to ghouls that Chun-Li found in her house. Chun-Li did not understand English, but she could take the initiative to send her visual images to Han Dong. Under Han Dong's guidance, she found the relevant books. Han Dong quickly read through the books as if he was reading a scientific research document. In a short time, he finished reading the relevant books, simplified the information, and organized it in his notebook. Ghoul, causes of formation, graveyard work, corruption of mind. It is commonly seen in graveyard workers or residents living around graveyards. When infected with graveyard fungus or attacked by Yin energy, their bodies will be in a graveyard state. Anorexia, aversion to sunlight, fear of strangers, and other characteristics are common. Once such symptoms are discovered, they must immediately go to the chapel to receive the relevant holy baptism. Until the symptoms subside, they must not go near the graveyard. If not treated in time, the individual has a 70% chance of dying and a 20% chance of going crazy. The remaining 10% possibility is that during dreams at night, they will establish a secret mental connection with the higher creatures outside the city walls. From there, they will be affected by corruption and evolve into ghouls. New ghouls need to eat graveyard moss, fungi, and other gloomy things as food. They have a strong desire to eat and are only active at night. Their green skin and the rancid smell they emit are easy to recognize. Once they eat enough and fully mature, ghouls will have the ability to think and try to reproduce and build ghoul nests. Chapter 42. Due to the influence of the cemetery, ordinary people's bodies are weakened. Therefore, when they dream at night, they will be influenced by the thoughts of higher life forms outside the city wall and degenerate into ghouls. Even across a giant city wall, they can use dreams to degenerate people. What the hell is this new higher life form? Han Dong thought that the origin of ghouls was caused by some kind of plague, but he didn't expect it to be related to things outside the city. In addition, it also means that The nature of ghouls has a certain relationship with things outside the city wall. Therefore, I need to wear goggles to reduce visual pollution. Why am I okay? Is it because the faceless skull is immune? Han Dong recorded all his guesses in a book, and will slowly verify them in the future. The characteristics of ghouls were also recorded in the book, including great strength, agility, fungal characteristics, and a certain regeneration. A flexible ghoul arm was placed on the table. In the next second, the arm was directly taken by Han Dong to the portable prison. Before entering the sterile laboratory, the arm was isolated using the sterile bag in the buffer room to prevent the spread of the fungus and contaminate the sterile room. Han Dong now needed to consider the arm problem. With such a weak body, he must find a way to solve it. The best way Han Dong could think of was to use the point of weight limit. Cell essence has been injected, weight limit increased by 2 points, ghoul sample. First of all, the ghoul's cell essence was injected into the cell mass, which was much lower than expected. In this way, Han Dong currently has an additional weight value of 27 points at his disposal. How do I check the relevant attributes of this arm? Before, it was through contact with the cell mass. Then, what about now? Just as Han Dong was asking himself, the voice from the skull echoed in the sterile room. Please place the body you want to use on the examination table. Examination table? When Han Dong turned his head, there was a clean table in front of him. Except for a slender tubular scanner, there was no other equipment. Detected a foreign object placed on the table. The scanner began to work, and in less than a minute, a paper report was generated from the side. Mature ghoul's arm name is shown in green font, quality. Good rhesus quality from low to high is as follows: gray, rough, white, normal, green, quality, blue, rare, purple, unique, pink, epic, gold, legendary, dark gold, empire. Weight requirement, 22 points. Basic. Strength slightly greater than normal people. Characteristics 1. Sharp claws, can cut through hardwood materials and some loose stones. 2. Graveyard fungus, when dealing damage to a target, it will also infect the target. Note: the arm can undergo homogenization and upgrade. Methods such as modification, virus injection, secret strengthening, etc. can improve the quality of the arm and grant additional attribute. I've basically inherited all the characteristics, and the weight requirements are also met. If I accept it, will my arm also become like this? Just as Han Dong was worrying about the changes in his posture, the system's voice sounded again. The assimilated limbs can be disguised, according to the host's requirements. This function is provided by the faceless skull. In this way, Han Dong no longer had to worry about anything. His weak body could finally change. Arm in process. Weight limit, 122,127 in the next 2 days. Nicholas' family had undergone earth-shattering changes. The school district housing had been divided a day in advance. It was a Victorian-style single-family building with 2 floors and a basement. It was located on the opposite side of the road of the National Royal Knight Academy. The interior of the house was decorated with metal art and marble. When the whole family took their luggage and left the civilian area of Samay, Nina and his mother, who were sitting in the carriage, cried at the same time. Han Dong looked at the scenery of the river with a blank face. Thank you, brother. Okay. The bag of copper coins cost less than 10 copper coins to buy a full set of furniture. In addition, Han Dong proposed to spend another 25 copper coins to buy steam-powered horses that were slightly modified. The steam-powered horses were more stable and steerable than ordinary horses. It was convenient for Nina to go to the mechanical workshop every day. After all, this Riverview house also had a matching stable. Metal horses were a means of transportation. Middle-class families at least had one. It was convenient for them to travel. Han Dong considered that his night studies would be completely closed, and he would only be able to go home during his free time. He was considering whether to hire a nanny for Nicholas' mother. However, his mother insisted that there was no need to hire a nanny. She said that she was not used to being served by others, so Han Dong did not insist. Moreover, Nina would also return from the mechanical workshop before nightfall to accompany his mother. Everything was arranged. It was the third day of registration. At 7 o'clock in the morning, Han Dong received a call. It was from the clockwork device on his wrist. Warren Nicholas, please follow the device's instructions and arrive at the apprentice night registration office in the academy before 8:30 to activate your night card and receive the freshman handbook. When the call ended, under Han Dong's research over the past few days, the clockwork device had turned into a pointer. Han Dong called a carriage and drove along the almost endless outer wall of the academy for about half an hour before he finally saw the gate of the National Royal Knight Academy. From this, one could see how big the academy was. The bronze gate that was fused with advanced mechanical craftsmanship was in front of him. In the center of the bronze gate was a huge knight insignia, 2 swords crossed over the head of a white horse. Han Dong quickly inserted the apprentice knight's golden card into the socket on the side of the gate. Click, 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 rumble, rumble. Steam power pushed the gears in the gate, and the gate slowly opened. It was not the grassy campus scene that he imagined. In front of him was a pure white staircase that was 100 meters tall. The staircase was sealed by walls on both sides, and there was only one way to go up. This staircase was the staircase of Ares. Speaking of the staircase, it was necessary to talk about the basic structure of the Holy City, Nunthena. The national city-state, the Holy City, covered half of Italy. The country's system was a parliamentary constitutional monarchy. The apocalyptic environment, the special talent selection mechanism of the Destiny realm, and the management of the parliamentary monarchy caused the Holy City to have a clear class division. The difference between the different classes was not only in terms of economy, but also in terms of ability. Therefore, in the early days of the Holy City Nunthena's establishment, the Parliament decided to completely transform the inner city. The plan was called the Staircase of the Three Gods. The first staircase had 3 steps, which were the staircase of Ares, the staircase of Hermes, and the staircase of Artemis. The second staircase had 2 steps, which were the staircase of Poseidon and the staircase of Apollo. The third staircase had only 1 step, which was the staircase of Zeus. It was rumored that there was a 4th step hidden under the ground, which was the staircase of Hades. The construction of the staircase of the 3 gods divided the Holy City into 4 major urban areas. The difference in elevation between the different urban areas was at least 50 meters. Once the outermost city wall was breached, only the civilian areas in the outer area would fall. At the same time, a second metal wall that was 100 meters tall would rise from the bottom of the Moslabi River to ensure the safety of the first staircase and above. Then staircase of Ares, that Han Dong was facing, was one of the first staircases. It was also the most special one, because this staircase only allowed apprentice knights and knights above to pass through. It went straight to the National Royal Knight Academy, on the 2nd floor of the Holy City. Chapter 43. Walking on the steps of Ares felt like climbing the sacred mountain of Olympus. The reason was the material used to construct the stairs. Every time he stepped on the stairs, he would feel a sense of fatigue, as if he had crawled dozens of meters on the mountain road. He relied entirely on the newly acquired ghoul arm to forcefully drag his body and complete the second half of the climb. To be honest, Han Dong felt that it was unfair. A trainee knight who majored in the talent of crusader had a stronger physique than others. It would definitely be easier for him to climb such stairs. After climbing the stairs, Han Dong, who was standing on the platform, could clearly see the civilian area built against the outer city wall, including the Samar area where Nicholas used to live. It was important to note that the 4 civilian areas were built in the east, south, west, and north respectively. The security branch was located near the edge of Samar. It was close to the Ghanaian civilian area where the zombie incident happened and the Black Rose Knight Barton Maldini's hometown. Otherwise, it would take a lot of time just to move through the civilian area. In front of the platform, it was a white stone building with a circular dome. It was surrounded by 10-meter-tall stone walls, and he could not see the situation inside the Knight Academy. There was only one option to enter the white stone building. The door was built with a mechanical structure. When Han Dong approached, steam pushed the piston, causing the large and small gears on the bronze door to rotate. The door opened on its own. The interior of the room was luxuriously decorated with brass as the main material. Rows of steel steam bookshelves against the wall were neatly arranged with various freshman files. At the steel round table in the center sat a special person in charge. He wore a wide-brimmed hat and a large number of metal accessories. The most special thing was, under the brim of the hat, half of the person's face was replaced by brass mechanical devices. Han Dong did not know if the person's brain was still intact. "Please show me your night card." A standard and magnetic voice came out of the half-metal mouth. As Han Dong handed over the card, he carefully observed the person's metal side profile. Through the hollow brass gaps, he could vaguely see a complete and functioning brain. "Warren Nicholas, you have passed the 4-star difficulty newbie event and have chosen mysticism, which has fewer choices. You have passed the interview team's review. There are not many problems with your background and character. Now fully activate your card and add the functions of treasury, school pass and bounty permit. The living allowances you receive during your studies, or the monetary rewards you receive from completing missions, will be recorded in the vault. You can go to any bank in the Holy City to withdraw them and enjoy preferential treatment. In addition, you can freely enter the ordinary areas of the Academy. You can also accept bounty missions within the Academy, or within the Academy's offices and churches established within the city. The Golden Apprentice Knight card was fully activated through a device similar to a typewriter. At the same time, the librarian took out a book with a special metal cover from the safe inside the iron table. It also had the emblem of a crossed sword and a white horse's head printed on it. Knight's Handbook, Academy Edition. The Knight's Handbook has the relevant freshman arrangements. Please follow the instructions and complete the freshman registration process. In addition, the relevant school rules were also listed in the book. It was necessary to memorize all the school rules in a short period of time. Violating the school rules would result in severe punishment. What you need to note is that there is only one copy of this handbook, and it cannot be shared with others. If you lose it, you will need to apply for a new copy from the Academy's management. Alright? Han Dong carefully flipped through the contents of the manual. The preface recorded the registration process of the Apprentice Knight in detail. Please go to the corresponding department according to your major profession and receive the course schedule. According to the different requirements of each department, complete the certification and the selection of a mentor. Go to the student dormitory area in the Academy and obtain a random room number through the Knight's card. It's quite similar to a university. I wonder what the mystery department will be like. According to the librarian, the number of apprentice knights majoring in mystery seems to be the least. Walking out of the white vaulted building. Green forests with high coverage, open marble roads, metal and kerosene street lamps built dozens of meters apart. The fresh air that entered his body made Han Dong feel refreshed. It gave him a feeling of being in a paradise. As the Knight Academy occupied a large area, there were bus stops at important places in the Academy. After waiting for a short while, Han Dong sat in a spacious carriage for free and headed to the mystery department. Han Dong noticed that there was a guide sign at every fork. The 5 major professions corresponded to the 5 most important institutions in the Knight Academy. However, there were also other important and indispensable institutions, such as Frowny Face Knight's Building, which was responsible for managing Apprentice Knight. Adventurers Guild, which was responsible for issuing dangerous bounty missions in the Holy City. Market, which allowed for free trade and the sale of goods. Machinery Manufacturing Association, a Alchemist Association, a Textile Association, a Authors Association, and so on. Han Dong was very interested in the Alchemist Association. Other than that, he was also curious about the Authors Association. However, the Night Academy lacked the typical landmark of a university, the library. Due to the different major professions, the library must have been split up and set up in different departments according to the types of books. The carriage arrived at the academy area under the jurisdiction of the mystery department. The originally lush green scenery of the academy changed instantly. Han Dong did not expect such a huge change. The dense rows of dead black trees formed a clear boundary with the public area of the academy. A large number of crows perched on the branches of the dead trees. Occasionally, the cries of banshees could be heard from the depths of the forest. Occasionally, the shadow of a giant spider could be seen flashing through the forest. Even without a wall, no one dared to trespass into this forest. There was a relatively wide main road that ran deep through this gloomy forest. It snaked towards the main building area of the mystery department. Of course, if one wanted to step on the main road, they had to verify their identity in front of a black metal door. It seemed that as long as one walked on the main road, they would not be attacked by the monsters and spirits in the forest. When Han Dong got off the carriage and took out his night identity card, a crow on a branch flapped its wings and stood on top of the metal door. Its black eyes stared at the card and Han Dong's face. Creak, the metal door slowly opened, allowing passage. Chapter 44. At the highest point of the forest, beyond the dark clouds, there was a special hemispherical room. It even felt like the clouds were carrying this special room. Other than a giant telescope made of pure copper, the room was made of a special silica stone that could reflect all kinds of light. Name: Stargazing Room. There were 2 people in the room, or it seemed like there was only one person. A new student is here. He seems pretty good. How can you tell? His body is very weak, weaker than the previous students. To be able to pass the destiny event with such a body, there must be something unusual about him. I remember now. He should be called Warren Nicholas, is it him? A trainee knight who passed the 4-star event. 4-star. It's been a long time since I saw a 4-star new student. Should we increase the difficulty of the test? I don't think so. Increasing the randomness and variables will allow us to better examine a new student's overall quality and not just increase the difficulty. Moreover, the way he passed the 4-star event might not be through brute force. I'll listen to you. Will the test be held in the Dark Moon Forest or in the tower? The former. There are more variables. Which method should we use? Let him choose for himself. Also, we need to add one more variable. You're not increasing the difficulty? The variable is not dangerous. It's just a simple variable. Moreover, it's important to his future development. If this young man can see the variable we set, he can pay special attention to it. This is not your style, Crow. Such is fate. Caw, caw. The number of crows was much more than Han Dong imagined. The carriage ran along the winding road. Along the way, Han Dong saw crows perched on every tree branch. The rhythmic cawing of the crows seemed to be transmitting some kind of signal. Suddenly, the carriage stopped. It was not out of the forest area yet. There's no road? The forest road that should have led to the Mysticism building was cut off halfway. It was blocked by trees. Han Dong could only walk down the carriage and find a road sign at the end of the road. There were a few strange words written on it: Dark Moon Forest Exit. There was also a directional arrow. It seems like I need to walk through the forest to reach the Mystery Branch building area and complete the new student registration. Fortunately, I came prepared. Han Dong had always believed that fire was very useful. At least during the newbie incident and the ghoul incident, he had to use a torch for illumination. Therefore, Han Dong lit a torch that he had prepared in his backpack and carefully ventured deeper into the creepy dark moon forest. It was easy to lose one's sense of direction and deviate from the straight path when walking through such a dark and dense forest of tall dead trees. However, Han Dong's situation was different. He could clearly realize what a straight line was. Even if his walking route deviated from a straight line due to physical problems, he would immediately correct it. Maybe it was Han Dong's strong sense of direction, or maybe it was the effect of the faceless skull. They walked for about half an hour. Unable to leave the withered tree forest, he found an exquisite little wooden house in the forest that was overflowing with firelight. Ever since he was reborn into this world, Han Dong had seen too many novel things. Maybe this small wooden house that's less than 100 square meters is the main building of mysticism. Let's go take a look. There was meaning in its existence. Han Dong carefully approached the wooden house and circled it. He found that the wooden house did not have a window design. The firelight he saw earlier was only seeping through the gap in the front door. Asterisk knock 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 asterisk. There was no response when he knocked on the door. Han Dong slowly pushed open the wooden door. It was just an ordinary wooden house, not a different world as he had imagined. However, there were many exquisite and strange props placed inside the wooden house. It was as if he had entered an antique shop from the Middle Ages. A letter of unknown origin fell right in front of Han Dong. Please choose any complete prop in the wooden house. You can even take down the door and take it with you. However, it must be complete. Walk out of the dark moon forest and hand over the prop to the management office. Note: your performance will determine your overall rating for the mystery branch. Another test. It's just studying, but it's really strict. First, it was the fate event, then the interview, then the background check in secret. And now, do I still need to go through the relevant tests before I go to the major building to register? Han Dong had thought that after he arrived at the Mystery Branch building, he would be able to use some basic testing equipment to determine what he was good at and from there, plan his future studies. He did not expect it to be carried out in such a strange way. The results of the test will affect your future studies at the Night Academy. Cheer up. After a few days of stress-free rest, Han Dong's condition had never been better. Not to mention, he had reattached a ghoul arm. He quickly examined the various props in the wooden house. Green crystal craft frog in a jewelry box. Morning box sealed with a glass cover. Gas mask fused with the steam style. Stitched pig mask hung on the wall. White silk thread scattered on the ground. Let's not talk about the miscellaneous items in the house. There are 12 options for the special prop alone. Once I make a choice, the test will be conducted. The following test methods would also be decided, and the difficulty level might be different. Let's choose this. Han Dong stared at the morning box and the glass coffin, and was about to choose this prop that seemed to come from hell. Creak. The sound of a wooden board creaking, because of the sound of his foot stepping on a special wooden board. This detail immediately attracted Han Dong's attention. The sound of this wooden board being pressed was different from the others. As expected, a hidden compartment? He easily moved the strange wooden board under his foot. In a secret compartment corresponding to the bottom of the ground, a small rusty iron box was stored in it. After checking the item stored in the iron box, Han Dong was a little moved. After a few minutes of consideration, Han Dong chose the iron box and turned to leave the wooden house. Someone's here. The moment he stepped out of the wooden house, the sound of light footsteps came from the forest. For a moment, Han Dong's expression changed and he entered a state of alert. A green line of plague flowed on the surface of his right arm. Unexpectedly, it was a dirty black-haired girl who ran out of the forest. From the skin color and facial features, she should be from the Middle East. She also wore 3 golden nose rings on her nose. The girl's hand was holding the golden card that symbolized a trainee knight. She squinted her eyes and asked with a little vigilance, You are a trainee knight? Yes. Great. I was lost in the dark moon forest for a few days and finally found the right direction. Chapter 45. Han Dong carefully observed the female student in the same batch. Her black hair was messy and tied up in a bun. Golden nose ring, ivory earrings, colorful stone bracelet, and clothes wrapped in woolen cloth. Just like the witch doctor from the Middle East, she looked more like a mystic apprentice than Han Dong in terms of appearance. She should be about the same age as Nicholas, about 19 years old. The girl stared at the iron box in Han Dong's hand with a frightened face. You've already chosen? What should I do? I feel that the thing you chose is dangerous. The iron box is emitting a strange aura. Can you show it to me? Okay. After the girl saw the thing in the iron box, she was so scared that her body trembled. What was stored in the iron box was not an item, but a pile of uncomfortable things, a large amount of dried skin, special skin, and the layer of skin that covered the eyes. It was because of this that Han Dong chose to bring the whole iron box. The girl from the Middle East kept biting her nails and said nervously and fearfully, This will kill people. Why did you choose this kind of thing? Monsters with strange collecting habits are more difficult to deal with and more paranoid than ordinary evil creatures. It's all your fault. It wasn't easy for us to pass the Destiny Realm and live a good life in the Night Academy. What should we do now? Han Dong didn't care about the girl's attitude and words at all. It was Han Dong's decision to choose the iron box after much consideration. He said impatiently, You're right? This is my choice. What does it have to do with you? You can go to the wooden house and choose another item. Can't you pass the test yourself? After being scolded so harshly by Han Dong, the girl in front of him seemed to realize her problem. She lowered her head and even faintly felt like she was about to cry. The internal test of the Academy allows teams, and it won't increase the difficulty. My sense of direction has been bad since I was young. I often get lost in the holy city and can't find my home. It took me a few days just to find this place. I definitely can't walk out alone. So, I think, the main point of Han Dong's concern was not the girl's poor sense of direction, but the problem of teams that he had never heard of. You're saying that teaming up will not increase the difficulty? And I got this information from the administrator when I entered the school. So, my original plan was to arrive at the wooden house first, and then wait for the other apprentice knights to arrive. Then, I would take the test and choose a team to pass the test. I didn't expect that I would get lost again, and then I met you here. Forming a team would not increase the difficulty. In a situation where they didn't know what kind of danger they were going to face, having one more person would reduce the risk. Of course, Han Dong also had to consider the possible danger this girl might pose. This test will definitely be carried out under the supervision of the relevant teachers of the mystery branch. It's best if I don't ask Miss Chun-Li for help to prevent information about the prison from being leaked. However, the ghoul's arms could still be used. The item in the metal box was indeed evil. If I could clear the dungeon with such an evil item, my rating would be much higher. This was related to my future development and resource allocation. There were many suspicious points about this young girl who had suddenly appeared, but there was a need to bring her along. If she was really an apprentice knight of the same level, it would be good to establish a good relationship with her in advance. Han Dong recalled his school life in his previous life. As an associate professor, he didn't even have a single friend. Every time he met other teachers in the school, he would only politely greet them. Life was very boring. When Han Dong learned that the cancer cells had spread, he only felt that it was a pity that he couldn't complete his research project. There was nothing else that was worth being nostalgic about. Okay, we'll form a temporary team. Since he had the chance to be reborn, Han Dong gradually tried to change himself. Great, Han Dong suggested. Let's introduce ourselves first, especially the abilities that you're currently good at. Tell me in detail. Han Dong had experience in teaming up with apprentice knights to solve dangerous situations together, so he put it to good use. The Middle Eastern girl stuck out her tongue. Yes. I haven't introduced myself yet. My name is Pasha Bahart. A few days ago, I passed the 2-star destiny realm. Because I learned witchcraft in the tribe for a period of time, I chose occultism. I haven't gone through systematic learning. So, I only know some divination. Divination? Han Dong understood what divination was. It was equivalent to using external objects, usually specific objects such as shells, cards, bamboo sticks, etc., to divine what would happen in the future. You only know how to divine. How did you get lost? Pasha explained, because I'm not very familiar with it. My thoughts are very messy. Especially after the distribution of destiny points, my divination ability has been strengthened. Sometimes I can foresee some future images in advance, causing my sense of direction to be extremely poor. But don't worry, I'm still very useful. I can foresee danger in advance. Han Dong nodded and began to introduce himself. Well, my name is Warren Nicholas. I have a certain combat ability, but it's not very strong. A knight who majored in occultism can't be compared with the group of crusaders. It's already very good that you have a certain combat ability. I'm most worried that the two of us only know how to divine. What kind of ability do you have? Can I see it? Under Pasha's inquiry. Under Han Dong's right arm, there was a certain green substance flowing through the blood vessels. Swish. His ordinary fingernails suddenly elongated, reaching a length of about 30 centimeters. They were sharp and curved. Just as the arm was about to expand, Han Dong immediately stopped the further transformation. Wow. You're a mutated plague scholar? Han Dong still didn't understand such professional terms. I read it from a book. I heard that people who can control plagues are the most dangerous people in the occultism profession. Those who can transform are the most powerful attackers in the occultism profession. I didn't expect you to have these two attributes at the same time. Amazing. Han Dong wanted to say that this was just a ghoul's arm. There was no need for so much explanation. However, if he was mistaken for a occultism ability, Han Dong wouldn't have to explain. Just like that, the two of them formed a team. Han Dong carried the metal box in his backpack and traversed the dark moon forest. The creaking sound of branches being squeezed, the screeching of crows, or the twisting sound of large insects crawling in the forest. Han Dong and Pasha were already used to these sounds. However, there was a strange sound mixed in with these sounds that made them uncomfortable. As time passed, the sound became clearer. Kacha, kacha. The sound of metal scissors came closer and clearer. It seemed to be hiding behind the twisted withered tree beside them. Chapter 46. At the same time, just as Han Dong and Pasha teamed up and left the forest together. If one were to look at the entire dark moon forest from a high altitude, Han Dong and Pasha were just two small dots in the vast forest, moving around in a small area of the dark moon forest. Overlooking the dark moon forest, there were as many as 40 wooden houses like this. Inside, there were all kinds of weird accessories and props that corresponded to different demons and ghosts for the freshman test. That's right. This year's Holy City sacrificial ceremony had a total of 32,000 participants. The festival square, where Han Dong was at, was just the southern part of the Holy City where participants gathered. And there were only 400 freshmen who came out of the Destiny realm alive and were given the title of Trainee Knight. Crusader and Library were popular professions. About 200 people chose these two major professions. Machinery was second, with about 80 people choosing it. Control was second to last, with about 70 people choosing it. Occultism was last, which was the case every year. This year, there were 8 more people choosing it than last year, with a total of 40 people choosing it. Most of the students who went to the school to sign up at different times would take the relevant preschool test in the building of the school or the affiliated building. Crusader was very simple. First, in front of various instruments, they completed the basic test of strength, speed, reaction, etc. Then, they only needed to obtain the permission of a mentor in the use of weapons such as swordsmanship, boxing, shield, or giant axe, etc. Trainee knights who majored in a library had to go through two procedures. First, they had to go through a magic detector to test their magic affinity and inclination. Then, they needed to learn the most basic main magic and successfully cast it within 3 days. Machinery school. For students who already had a certain level of achievement in crafting, they were exempted from the test. Other students could analyze the structure of precision machinery and draw it on the spot, or they could choose to shoot accurately with a flintlock. Students who majored in control were required to control ordinary creatures, non-magical creatures, raised in the school's internal farm. As long as they could control an ordinary creature within 30 minutes, there was no danger at all. Only in occultism was different. Only a few students would take standardized and non-dangerous tests in the occultism building. Any student who was slightly special would be placed in the dark moon forest to undergo a certain degree of danger. This was also the reason why some of the middle to high-yield young people who knew the inside story did not choose mysticism. There was no need to risk the title of novice knight. Just as he was about to enter the academy and undergo systematic and standardized learning to develop his potential, it was not worth it to die on the way to school. Therefore, mysticism studies became the most neglected department. The establishment of such an entrance test was the request of the highest management of the mysterious academy. The reason why he set up such a dangerous and frightening test was to let the new apprentice knights understand that once they stepped on the path of mysticism, their future would be filled with endless unknown and fear. He had to be mentally prepared in advance. Crack, crack, the strange sound of scissors made Han Dong's heart tighten. It was similar to the feeling of being targeted by an evil spirit in the movie Bewitched. It made his hair stand on end. Han Dong abruptly turned around and looked at the withered tree behind him. Unexpectedly, the sound of the scissors quickly changed and went to another direction. As Han Dong searched for the sound of scissors would always change instantly. As he could not lock onto the target, this made Han Dong uncertain. Once he was ambushed, it would be really troublesome. Han Dong, do you want me to come out and help? It's a little strange that something is targeting you. Chen Li's voice echoed in his mind. You can't come out yet. This is a test in the academy. I have to solve it myself. Now, I don't have a valid reason to explain your existence. What if your life is in danger? Chen Li's words contained a very small amount of concern. You decide for yourself. When the communication ended, Han Dong immediately looked at Pasha Bahart, who had the ability to divine. Hearing the strange sound of scissors, although she was afraid, she tried her best to remain calm and observe around. Didn't you say that you know how to divine? Can you find the target's location? Yes. As long as you perform divination through the medium, you can always determine its direction. Why didn't you say so earlier? Because, once you perform divination, the target will lock onto me. If we can't determine the target's location, we might all die here. The medium, is it the thing in the iron box? Yes. Han Dong immediately opened the iron box, reached out, and picked up a piece of frosted dry eyelid and handed it to Pasha. Lock onto the target's location. I'll think of a way. Okay. Pasha took out an old metal compass. She placed the medium close to the compass and muttered something. A grayish-white energy flowed out from Pasha's palm, connecting the medium and the compass. A simple ritual was completed. This way, the needle would always point to the scissors monster hidden in the dark. However, the needle did not point in a certain direction. Instead, it was spinning rapidly. It was as if the target was moving around at an extremely fast speed. Impossible. The test's intensity can't be so high. If the movement speed is really that fast, we're no match for it. The needle is only limited to pointing to the target's position in the horizontal direction. The only possibility is, the target is at the same vertical coordinate as us. Be careful. Han Dong suddenly looked up, but there was nothing on the tree branch above his head. There was only one possibility, underground. Gotcha. Gotcha. The monster seemed to have realized that its location had been exposed and stopped hiding. A pair of scissors, flickering with silver light, extended from the soil. It was indeed as Pasha Bahart had said. Due to her directional divination, the monster's target was her. Gotcha. The scissors opened and closed, grayish oil splashed onto the ground. The sharp scissors actually severed the tendons around Pasha's ankle. Pasha screamed as her body fell backward. Danger! The moment the scissors severed the tendons, it immediately moved back. If Pasha fell like this, the back of her head would fall onto the sharp scissors. A green ray of light shot out, pointing at the soil corresponding to the scissors. The plague ignored the soil's obstruction and directly affected the monster hidden below. A series of strange, muffled cries could be heard. The scissors retracted. Pasha Bahart's life was thus saved. The green ray of light was the plague energy shot out by Han Dong through the weapon of destiny. This test arranged by the mystery branch is real. If I hadn't acted in time, this girl would have died, right? It wasn't easy for them to select a talent through the realm of destiny, and they're abandoning her just like that? For a moment, Han Dong focused all his attention, entering a state of concentration when facing death. Chapter 47. Ugh! Her hamstring was severed by a sharp object. A normal person would definitely scream in pain. However, Pasha Bahart, who had experienced a fateful event, knew that screaming was meaningless. Instead, it might attract other ferocious insects and mutated beasts in the dark moon forest. Thus, the moment her body fell, she quickly tore off a piece of cloth from her clothes and bit it to stop screaming. This was the only thing she could do. It was impossible to heal the injury. Pasha was just a beginner in mysticism, so she was helpless against such an injury. She had completely lost her ability to move. As far as the current test was concerned, she would only be a burden to Han Dong. In a life-and-death situation, many people would choose to abandon their teammate. However, Han Dong did not do so. He was not showing mercy or being a saint. It was just that Han Dong considered a special reason and had to bring Pasha Bahart along to complete the test. Han Dong prepared a large amount of miscellaneous items in his backpack. Among them was the linen bought from the grocery store, which was used to bandage Pasha's ankle injury. Thank you. Pasha Bahart's eyes were filled with gratitude. However, she knew that the loss of her ability to move meant that she could only wait for death. It was impossible for her to leave the vast dark moon forest. Why don't you leave? I definitely won't be able to walk out of this forest like this. Han Dong patiently squatted in front of Pasha and told her his plan. No need. I might not be able to walk out alone. What happened just now is enough to confirm the validity of your words. Due to the directional divination problem, the scissors monster targeted you. It is now hiding in an underground area to recuperate. You can perform a directional divination again and let the scissors monster continue to target you. Under the guidance of the needle, I will directly force it out of the ground. Let's see what kind of monster it is. Okay, actually, this was very dangerous. If Han Dong did not act in time, Pasha might be strangled by the scissors monster. However, she had already lost her ability to move, but Han Dong chose to stay and give her such a plan. She was so grateful that she naturally would not refuse. As long as she could kill the monster, even if her ankle was injured, she could slowly leave the dark moon forest. The plan was set. Han Dong found a relatively short dead tree nearby. Using the strength of the ghoul arm, he dragged his body to the top of the tree and quietly waited for the target to appear. Pasha leaned against the withered tree and sat down. She inserted the torch beside her and continued to predict the position of the strange figure. Kacha kacha. Not long after, the sound of scissors rang out in the forest again, causing Pasha to tremble in fear. Han Dong used the darkness of the night to conceal himself and focused all his attention on the situation below him. There was a clear green liquid flowing through the blood vessels in his right arm. While waiting, tap 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 tap, the sound of the clockwork needle moving was particularly clear. In the following operation, if there was even a second of delay or an error in judgment, the plan would fail and Pasha would be killed. 3 long minutes passed. The divining needle in Pasha's hand was no longer pointing in a certain direction, and it began to rotate quickly with a small amplitude. This meant that the scissors monster had completely closed in. "Nicholas, it's here!" Kacha kacha. The scissors cut through the soil and aimed at Pasha's waist. At the same time, Han Dong abruptly jumped down from the top. Although it was the shortest withered tree in the vicinity, it was still about 4 meters tall. With Han Dong's previous physical fitness, it was inevitable that he would break his leg if he jumped from such a height. But it was different now. There was a part of Han Dong's body, right arm, that could withstand the impact of falling from such a height. It could even convert the gravitational potential energy generated by the fall into an attack. Disguise cancel Han Dong's seemingly thin and yellow right arm. During the process of falling, it quickly changed into a ghoul arm that was disproportionate to the body. It had thick, green, elastic skin and 5 sharp, curved claws with plague attribute. The scissors had already cut through Pasha's waist and abdomen and were about to pierce into her internal organs. Han Dong used the impact of falling to tear open the loose soil with his sharp claws. He came into contact with the scissors monster hidden in the ground. Whoosh! The feeling of cutting into a soft substance clearly came from his fingertip. The ghoul arm offset most of the impact of falling, allowing Han Dong to land steadily. Come out, as the claws had completely pierced into the target's body. Han Dong exerted the maximum strength of the ghoul arm and lifted it up with all his strength. The soil broke open. A monster was lifted out of the ground, however. This monster pulled out the sharp claws that were inserted into its body in midair and retreated to create a distance from Han Dong. It landed 3 meters away. It was different from Han Dong's imagination of a humanoid creature holding scissors. Its festering and shriveled body, empty eye sockets, and obvious stitches between the joints. It was like a corpse that had been dead for a long time and had been resurrected by some evil witchcraft. It also had 8 degenerated arms, each less than 30 centimeters long, similar to the arms of a dwarf. However, these seemingly short arms were covered with hard shells on the fingers and the back of the hands, allowing it to dig holes and crawl underground quickly. As for the scissors, it was not held in any hand. It was wrapped around the tongue. The tongue that was half a meter long hung outside the mouth. With the forked mouth at the tip of the tongue, it wrapped around the handle of the scissors and could accurately cut the target. What the hell is this? To be honest, such a scissors monster was even more terrifying than the evil spirit in the Destiny space, especially the tongue that stretched half a meter out of the mouth, wrapped around the scissors and swayed in the air. It felt like as soon as it got close, it would be pierced by the scissors. Another point. Han Dong's attack did not achieve the expected effect. Although the abdomen of the scissors monster was pierced by the sharp claws, the fungal infection did not spread out. It seemed that because it was made of corpses and did not have any corrosive fungus, it did not have any effect. A product of suturing. The teachers in the mysterious academy who are proficient in suturing techniques can create this kind of manipulator. Pasha suddenly explained the origin of the scissors monster. How to deal with it? The core. This kind of suturing product is powered by the core, and the core maintains their various activities. As long as the core can be destroyed, it can be killed. The core is similar to the nucleus of a cell. Han Dong thought that once the huge ghoul claws pierced the target's body, it could end all of this with the effect of the cemetery fungus. It seems that I still thought too simply, can only fight head-on? Han Dong tried his best to put on a decent fighting posture. This was a simple fighting style he learned from the gym when he was alive. He did not know if it would be effective against such a suturing monster. Chapter 48. Rewind time to a day ago. The day before Han Dong went to register at the Night Academy. During the relocation from the Samar civilian district to the school district, most of the relocation work was completed by the local security personnel. As for the furniture, his sister Nina and mother went to the big market in the civilian district to choose. As long as they paid, the staff would deliver the goods to their home. On this day, Han Dong didn't have to worry about anything. He just needed to rest well. However, Han Dong didn't have any intention of relaxing. He chose to study behind closed doors in his home in the civilian district that was completely empty. First, he read about ghouls for about 5 hours. He had a detailed and in-depth understanding of this strange species. Then, he began to train and use that arm. He didn't have to be proficient in connecting this brand new arm. At the very least, he needed to be able to use it smoothly. First, Han Dong was aware of the weight problem. This arm, which was taken from a mature ghoul, was not compatible with Nicholas's thin body, which was barely 1.7 meters tall and had been malnourished for a long time. Including the length of the fingernails, this arm could touch the ground when it hung down normally. The strong muscle tissue was almost the same width as the body. It was not coordinated at all. The weight of this arm is estimated to be 20 to 30 kilograms. My body can't bear it at all. Once I swing it, my whole center of gravity will be off balance. I can't fight at all. After practicing for less than 10 minutes, Han Dong couldn't take it anymore. He was sweating profusely and panting. The ghoul arm had the characteristics of great strength, agility, fungal characteristic, and a certain degree of regeneration. However, they were only limited to this arm. Han Dong's physical fitness was still poor. This can't go on. Nicholas's body can't be trained so easily. I have to think of a solution. Before I can explain the existence of Chun-Li, the possessed, I can't let Chun-Li appear in front of others. If I encounter danger during the registration, I have to deal with it alone. A short sword alone isn't enough. I have to control this arm and completely turn it into my own ability. Is there any compromise? I can use the power of the ghoul arm without having to bear such a weight. Han Dong stared at the giant arm. The only thing he can do is to use the imitation ability granted by the faceless skull. In addition to disguising his face, he can also disguise his arms as a human. Was there a way to compromise? Han Dong spent 4 hours switching between his original form and his disguise. Slowly, as the number of times he switched increased, he became more proficient at it. So much so that Han Dong gradually felt the wonderful feeling of switching between the two. He had to grasp that feeling and stop halfway through the switch. Unknowingly, the sky had already darkened. The kerosene lamp in the room had been removed, so the room was pitch black. After a while, a faint green light appeared in the room, scaring some neighbors who were passing by to return home. The green light came from Han Dong's cemetery fungus attribute in his right arm. Green fluorescent blood vessels covered his arm and even protruded outwards. In addition, there were sharp claws that were 10 centimeters long on the forearm. It was short and thin, but it was even sharper. In this form, the arm maintained the size of a human, but the weight remained the same. The green light emitted from his arm reflected Han Dong's sinister smile. Haha! Success! This is a compromise. The weight and size of the arm remain the same, but it can stimulate the cemetery fungus and sharp claws attribute. Although the power is greatly reduced, I can still freely control it. Han Dong easily waved his right arm. Wherever the claws passed, some corrosive fungal spores would be left in the air. After spending half a day, he was finally able to freely use this new arm. However, Han Dong's practice plan was not over yet. He took out a few white candles from his backpack and lit up the dark old room. Miss Chun-Li, following Han Dong's shout. The candlelight swayed. The red dress floated out. The woman stood in the darkest corner of the room with her head down. In such a scene, it was really a bit scary. Han Dong was almost substituted into the scary scene. His breathing was slightly rapid. Don't scare me. I didn't mean it. Chun-Li immediately tied up her hair with a rubber band. I'm just used to this. This image makes me feel more comfortable. Used? So it's not the intention of ghosts to scare people? It was the first time Han Dong heard such a thing. Once Chun-Li tied up her hair in a ponytail, the feeling of horror disappeared without a trace. Perhaps because of the evil refining evolution, Chun-Li also shed a lot of the rustic aura from the mountain village. The rich evil aura made her look more cold, and at the same time, it made her skin delicate and cold. Why are you looking for me? Practice with me. Because I can't let you appear in public at the moment, there may be a series of tests on this trip to the Night Academy. I must have a certain level of strength, otherwise I won't be able to raise my head in the academy and affect my future development. Practice with you? I'm worried. I'll hurt you. When Chun-Li's eyes met with Han Dong's, she would dodge from time to time. It's okay. Can't you just stop at the right time? Some superficial wounds don't matter. Then I'll try. Full strength? Try full strength first. If I can't keep up, then slowly lower it. As soon as he finished speaking, before Han Dong could react, a cold wind blew over his body, and a kitchen knife was placed on his neck. Chun-Li was no longer a mild demonized person like she was in the Destiny realm. After drinking the liquid in the Holy Grail and evolving, Chun-Li's temperament, evil aura, and overall attributes had greatly improved. It could be said that she had completely surpassed the limits of a human. Slow down a bit. In the end, under the training of the two, when Chun-Li reduced her strength to 30%, it was just enough for Han Dong's training intensity. After this training, Han Dong went home to rest until the wee hours of the morning. Time returned to the present. Dark Moon Forest. It was all thanks to this training. Han Dong chose to make a battle plan with himself as the center and face the scissor-stitched monster alone. When the monster's tongue waved the scissors and attacked, the pressure was much less than Chun-Li's. My speed, fear, and courage are all inferior to Chun-Li if this is the case. Just as the scissor-stitched monster was about to approach, a portion of plague energy shot out from the tip of the dagger. It accurately shot into the monster's mouth, corroding the crucial part, the tongue. The long tongue fell to the ground together with the scissors. Han Dong's right arm had returned to its normal size. Green veins protruded from the surface of his skin, and his sharp claws were in place. Whoosh! Taking advantage of the time when the stitched tongue was broken, Han Dong took the initiative to attack. His claws cut into the stitched monster's body and tore it open. A dark core was attached to the stomach wall. Chapter 49. The core was exposed. Han Dong knew that it was impossible for him to fight a battle of attrition with his current body condition. He seized the opportunity. He held the plague doctor's short blade in his left hand. When he saw the core-like object stuck in the stomach, Han Dong stabbed with the sword. Not only was the short blade poisonous, but it was also very sharp. The unprotected core was cracked by the sword. Visible plague energy flowed out from the tip of the sword and seeped into the core through the crack. Crack. The core was completely shattered. The sutured monster that needed to be maintained by the core was like a marionette that had lost control. Its body was limp on the ground like mud, and there was no sense of danger at all. The dark moon forest was the territory of the mystery branch. Han Dong suspected that the crows on the branches could monitor his every move. Therefore, he did not take out the special metal syringe, and did not take the risk to extract the essence of the sutured monster's cells. What's going on with this forest? Han Dong was not allowed to examine the dead sutured monster in detail. The seemingly ordinary soil had turned into a quagmire and sucked the sutured monster into it. Will it revive? Han Dong could not be sure if the sutured monster that was sucked into the ground would revive and continue to attack them. Seizing the time, Han Dong helped Pasha up and left the forest as quickly as possible. 1 hour later. Due to Han Dong's superior sense of direction, they successfully left the strange dark moon forest without taking any detours. As for the possibility of revival, it did not happen. The soil took the sutured monster away, and it was most likely to be recycled. There was a gurgling stream. A clear stream that was 5 meters wide served as the border of the dark moon forest. It separated the forest from the central building area. They only needed to cross an arched wooden bridge to reach the core building area of the mystery branch. Before crossing the wooden bridge, the building was completely covered by a thick fog. It was impossible to see the overall scale of the building. We'd have finally made it out. Thank you, Nicholas. The Middle Eastern girl's eyes were filled with gratitude. She even felt like crying. Without Han Dong, she would have died a long time ago. Our luck is not bad. Nicholas, let's quickly cross the wooden bridge and go to the main building to submit the test items. According to the rules of the test, if we don't submit the items, it won't be considered complete. There might be a certain amount of danger during this period. Pasha was right. They had to hurry. However, Han Dong stopped in the middle of the wooden bridge and stared at the clear stream flowing under the bridge. Why don't you give it to me? Facing Han Dong's question, Pasha was confused. What thing? You swapped the real iron box, didn't you? I don't know the exact time of the switch, but if I go to the mystery branch building to submit the mission, I'll most likely be judged as failing, right? For a moment, the atmosphere changed. You won't fail. You'll just lose marks. For a moment, Pasha, whose ankle had been cut open by the scissors, did not need to hold onto the guardrail of the wooden bridge. She stood in the middle of the wooden bridge without any expression on her face. Han Dong immediately turned around and held his short sword horizontally in front of him. The ghoul arm also activated a corresponding characteristic. However, Pasha's next move was not to hurt Han Dong. Instead, she took out the real iron box with the eyelid and handed it to Han Dong with both hands. To a certain extent, it meant that Pasha's real identity was not that of a scheming, treacherous student who had deliberately swapped the eyelid and enjoyed the test results alone. Instead, she was Han Dong's interference in the test this time. Pasha widened her eyes and asked curiously, "When did you find out?" Han Dong received the real iron box. After confirming that Pasha was not a treacherous person, he put away his short sword. From the beginning, I suspected that it was not a problem with your acting skills. Instead, you made a fundamental mistake. You relied on me too much. From the moment I joined the Destiny Realm until now. With my physical fitness, my teammates would often dislike me at first sight. They would not even believe that I was a trainee knight. However, when you appeared, you did not suspect me at all and tried to team up with me. According to what you said, you could have continued to wait in the wooden house for the next trainee knight to come. There was no need for you to take the test with me who had a poor physical fitness and chose a dangerous item. Maybe you divined something in advance, but you were still too active, which made me suspicious. After all, my appearance could not give the opposite sex any sense of security. Hearing Han Dong's explanation, Pasha could not help but laugh. Ha ha ha. Interesting, so there was a mistake here. Your body really could not make your teammates trust you. Serious malnutrition and a skinny body is really bad. Sigh, it was a mistake. Han Dong continued, Of course, your performance was too ordinary. You did not look like a trainee knight who had experienced the Destiny realm. Therefore, I can basically confirm that you deliberately pretended to be a noob and secretly swapped the key items to enjoy the fruits of others' labor, or you were also a part of the test. Clap, clap, clap. Hearing this, Pasha began to clap. Amazing. Also, I have a question. When I lost my ability to move, why did you choose to stay? Was it because of the Justice's thoughts, or you guessed my identity in advance and thought that I was also a part of the test and stole the important item? That's why you chose to stay and fight around me. Han Dong said without any scruples. It's just a choice made for my own benefit. In today's world, very few people would risk their lives for a stranger they just met, right? I just thought that saving you might give the test a higher evaluation. In addition, your divination can indeed attract stitches. This will give us a chance to strike first. Pasha nodded. Well, you can report to the main building now. After saying that, the girl, Pasha Bahart, disappeared in front of Han Dong. At the same time, in the Star observation room, a special person revealed a satisfied smile. Phew! I thought there would be a tough battle, but I didn't expect that I only needed to expose my identity. There are so many important points in this test. It's very troublesome if I don't pay attention. When he crossed the wooden bridge, the thick fog dissipated. It was likely that Han Dong entered the thick fog barrier and was no longer affected by the fog. It was completely different from the night teaching building that Han Dong had imagined. Standing in front of him was a huge castle tower that reached into the clouds. The medieval architectural style looked like it was made of gray stone bricks, but in fact, it might have used some special material that made the building give ordinary people a strong sense of oppression. And Han Dong realized a problem. Strange, this kind of building that reaches into the clouds should be very obvious. Why can't I see it from the periphery of the school? Could it be that they used some kind of magic to hide this building? To get close to the castle tower, he had to pass through a cemetery that was filled with dense energy. The cemetery covered a large area, and there was no need to go around it. It was as if the cemetery was the castle's front yard. Just as Han Dong carefully walked on the stone path in the middle of the cemetery, a gloomy, hairy arm suddenly stretched out from one side of the cemetery. This sudden jump scare scared Han Dong, and he immediately turned around to prepare for battle. The person who crawled out was a resident of the cemetery. As he crawled out, he put on a neat formal suit and stuffed 2 spare eyeballs into his empty eye socket. After putting his tongue and dentures into his mouth, he made a relatively friendly voice. New trainee knight, I'm your temporary butler, Aggie. Next, I'll lead you into the Dark Moon Tower. Chapter 50. A temporary butler that crawled out of the cemetery? Don't tell me that every freshman has a corresponding butler? Han Dong asked curiously. That's right. The responsibility of the Cemetery Management Committee is to receive the trainee knights, and at the same time, we're also responsible for the environmental sanitation and basic security of the inner island. Cemetery Management Committee. Han Dong tried his best to accept all of this as he followed the cemetery butler to the main building. There are obvious livor mortis on the surface of the body, and there are partial ulceration wounds. Without the effect of blood cells, the body is obviously in a dead state. Why can they still carry out normal physiological activities? If I have the chance and equipment, I really want to observe their cell structure. Due to the limitations of the experimental equipment, Han Dong couldn't conduct normal cell research. When he had a certain amount of funds and understood the science and technology of the Holy City, he also planned to conduct in-depth biological research on these strange and magical creatures. While heading to the main building, the cemetery butler explained some basic information about the Mystery Branch in detail. The main building of the Mystery Branch, the Dark Moon Tower, was remodeled and expanded 30 years ago by the department head and chief of staff of the Knights of Pestilence, Mr. Black and White. The Dark Moon was set up to completely hide the tower and the surrounding ancillary buildings. It's the tallest building in the National Royal Knight Academy. It's divided into 4 major levels and 14 important areas. Knights of Pestilence, Chief of Staff? This was the second Knight Order that Han Dong had heard of. Moreover, the position of Chief of Staff was most likely the second highest position in the Knight Order. It was obvious how high the position was. The cemetery butler said proudly, "The Knights of Pestilence are not the strongest of the 13. Although the Knights of Plague isn't the strongest of the 13, it's a special group that can't be missed. Mr. Black White's existence is extremely important to the entire Holy City." 13 Knight Orders? No wonder Barton Forgus wanted to pull me into his Black Rose Knights when he knew that I passed the 4-star newbie event. The butler continued, "With the Dark Moon Tower as the main building, the Mystery Branch also has 4 major ancillary areas: the Dark Moon Forest, the Great Cemetery, the Old Sewer, and the Dead Water Swamp. Every subsidiary area has its own reason for existence. You will naturally understand it in the future. I'd like to remind you to be careful of the Old Sewer and the Dead Water Swamp. If you enter recklessly, your life may be in danger. Got it?" Han Dong had a general understanding of the mystic-type territories. "Excuse me, but won't you become ghouls if you stay in the graveyard?" The butler replied with a smile, "Under the protection of the Dark Moon, we won't receive any interference from outside the city walls." "Dark Moon?" Han Dong raised his head. A black moon, similar to a lunar eclipse, hung in the sky. The central part was black, with only a white halo outlining the circular outline. The Dark Moon shrouded the entire area of the Mystery Branch, hiding it from the outside world. At the same time, it also completely isolated the mental influence of the higher lifeforms outside the city walls. It took half an hour to cross the cemetery. Finally, he came to a side door of the Dark Moon Tower. It was sealed by a thick black iron gate. Turning the valve opened the gate. It was not the hall of the tower where a large number of apprentice knights gathered. In the elevator room, more than 10 old lifts were set up here. Each of the elevators corresponded to a different level of the building. In addition, a series of corresponding serial numbers had to be entered on the copper keypad before the lifts would operate normally. The lifts are a fast and safe way to transfer within the tower. It can help you pass through some dangerous areas and reach the place you want to go. I suggest that you memorize the various serial numbers of the lifts within a short period of time after you register. It can save you a lot of trouble. All right? The lifts stopped around the middle area of the tower. The cemetery butler did not continue to lead the way. He extended his hand and gestured. "In front is the temporary gathering room for the apprentice knights. After you go in, hand in your test items. After all the apprentice knights in this batch have completed their test, the results of the test will be announced, self-introduction, and tutor selection will be carried out internally." "Thank you." Tutor selection. As an associate professor and master's tutor in a university, Han Dong naturally knew what tutor selection was. After the postgraduate students were accepted, the teachers in the department and the postgraduate students who passed the exam sat in a conference room. They would exchange information on academic and personal interests. In the end, they would choose a suitable tutor based on the student's personality and interests. Let's take a look first. Han Dong did not know anything about the teachers in the mystery department. He only knew one at the moment. It was the department head, Mr. Black and White, that the butler had mentioned. It was not easy to follow a tutor who was at the level of a dean. Creak, he pushed open the ebony door at the end of the passage. It was a large round table in the council hall. It was a 2-story design. There was a chandelier with hundreds of branches hanging from the top. Its shape was similar to a human's arm, holding the candle with the palm. The first floor was the round table area for the apprentice knights. The huge round table of black stone could accommodate 60 students. Each student's file was kept on the table so that they could sit according to their number. The second floor's design was very strange. There were more than a dozen seats embedded in the wall, allowing the teachers to sit in the air. There were already more than 20 apprentice knights gathered here. Most of them had European faces. Even if their hair color was different, they had the same white skin. Most of them wore clothes and accessories that symbolized that they were not commoners. They were the younger generation of the middle and high-producing class families like Edward. Han Dong's commoner attire was especially eye-catching in such an occasion. Of course, those who were able to come here were all apprentice knights who had passed various tests. No one would judge a book by its cover. At most, they would secretly complain about Han Dong's physical fitness. However, it was rare to see a student like Han Dong who did not have any obvious injuries on his body. Most of the students were injured in the tests arranged by the mystery department. Some were even seriously injured. Han Dong placed the metal box corresponding to the test in the corresponding groove on the table. With the sound of gears turning, the metal box sank and was handed over to the relevant department for review. Most of the people were dissatisfied with the dangerous tests given by the mystery department. Complaints could be heard everywhere. For example, there was a male student beside Han Dong. There was a large wound on his abdomen. The bleeding had been stopped by a special method. He used a special suturing technique to suture the blood vessels and external wounds. Of course, during the suturing process, he was constantly vomiting. This kind of individual test is different from the group test in Fate. If one's ability is not up to standard, it is indeed very dangerous. Chapter 51. Within an hour, all the trainee knights who chose mysticism were present. A small number of trainee knights who failed the test were not present. Han Dong scanned the group of trainee knights who were in the same batch. Other than Han Dong, there were only 2 students who could pass the mysticism test unscathed. One of them seemed to be from Arabia. He had a yellow skin tone and wore the iconic Arabian headscarf. He was a young man around 19 years old. During the waiting time, he sat cross-legged and meditated. Feeling Han Dong's gaze, he opened his eyes slightly and smiled politely. The other person was a little special. She was a girl wearing a wooden half-mask. She had short black hair, an oval face, a high nose bridge, thick lips, and a pair of deep black eyes. She gave off a mysterious vibe. What was noteworthy was that there were all sorts of small potion bottles on the belt around her waist. Her backpack was also filled with items related to herbology. The girl took out a pestle and mortar and mixed the herbs in her backpack appropriately. She then added a special preparation on her waist and started grinding. She created a green herbal paste that could effectively disinfect and stop bleeding. It could even speed up the healing of wounds to a certain extent. Then, she distributed the herbal paste to the injured trainee knights with a friendly smile, winning the trust of many people. The aura of a leader? If there is a class system similar to the university, this girl should be the class monitor from now on. Not long after, the short-haired girl walked past Han Dong. She nodded slightly when she saw that Han Dong was not injured and smiled politely. Han Dong, who used to teach in the university, had seen countless young girls. He had never seen an outstanding student with such good looks, aura, and strength. The short-haired girl seemed to have smelled something different about Han Dong. She turned back to look at Han Dong many times. There were 37 trainee knights in the meeting room. All the trainee knights who had passed the life and death tests and invested fate points in mysticism were here. Even with the herbal paste being distributed, the students were still complaining about the test. I heard that the apprentice knights of the Crusader faction will be tested by specialized equipment and a panel of judges. There won't be any danger, and it will be fair and just. Why is there a need to arrange such a dangerous test when there are only a few freshmen in the mystery branch? This might be the reason why so few people choose the mysticism branch. My mystery branch entrance test is based on the mystery plan written by Mr. Black and White. After 3 generations of revision, I came up with the test method. Suddenly, a powerful voice came from all around the conference room, suppressing everyone's discussion. Such a test includes the assessment of an individual's strength, temperament, IQ. After all, the newbie fate event that you experienced was completed in a party. You could have used the gaps or the deaths of others to clear the stage. It is necessary to conduct a comprehensive assessment of your individual strength. A mystic scholar had to have the ability to fight alone. Otherwise, when you join the Night Order in the future, you will be the first to die when you go to battle outside the city walls because of the mystical scholar's special positioning. If any trainee knights are not satisfied with the test, you can submit your opinions in writing to Mr. Black and White. If your opinions are worth adopting, you may even be rewarded. As soon as he said that, the meeting room immediately fell silent. At the same time, the teachers arrived. Plague gas. The vines twined. Stars twinkled. Every teacher had appeared in a supernatural manner, sitting on a suspended chair on the second floor. An invisible pressure engulfed the entire room. Although each teacher had a completely different ability, their clothing and accessories were all different. But they all had one thing in common. They wore the iconic beak mask on their faces. This kind of mask also had the effect of goggles. The strange-looking beak mask originated from the Black Death, the largest plague in Europe in the Middle Ages. A group of people who called themselves plague doctors appeared. They wore these beak masks. The beak was filled with all kinds of spices and herbs, used to filter the so-called plague gas. It was considered an early version of a gas mask. However, the medical technology of that time could not cure the Black Death. This group of plague doctors looked very professional, but in fact they did not understand the theory of the disease. They only knew how to use folk remedies. For example, 1. They believed that the disease was caused by the stench in the air, so they lit incense to disperse the plague gas. 2. They believed that the disease was caused by the contamination in the blood, so they used the simple and crude bloodletting treatment. Not only did these treatments have no effect, they could also cause the patient to die prematurely during treatment. Since they could not save the patient, they could only collect the body. Most plague doctors would collect the bodies of the patients who died of the disease to the hospital for autopsy. In the eyes of the people, their arrival was like the arrival of the god of death. Whoever they treated would die. Over time, the oddly dressed plague doctors were rumored to be the messengers of death, and the beak mask also became an ominous symbol. The evaluation of the test has been completed. Your performance has been divided into 3 grades. Between the grades, the corresponding teachers have different rights to choose. First, we will announce the list of qualified apprentice knights. Those who are qualified will not have the right to choose. The teachers will ask you academic questions, and those who answer satisfactorily will become the personal apprentice of the teachers. What if the answer is not satisfactory? Someone immediately asked. If no teacher is willing to take you in, you will become a low-level apprentice in the mystery branch. You will not be able to obtain resources from the teachers and can only rely on yourself. If you can't stay, choose to quit school. Such an answer made many people's faces turn ugly. Then, a female teacher was responsible for reading out the names of the qualified apprentices. The apprentice knights who were read out had ugly expressions, as if they were labeled as slaves. They needed to please the teachers as much as possible so that the teachers would accept them. Otherwise, they would have no future. There were a total of 37 students, and 25 of them had their names read out. Next, we will announce the list of intermediate apprentices. Those who are evaluated as intermediate will at least be chosen by the mystery branch teachers with the title of lecturer. If your academic answers and your talent are not bad, you might be chosen by an associate professor, and very rarely by a professor. There were a total of 9 students who were evaluated as intermediate. Han Dong was not one of them. This meant that there were still 3 people who were evaluated as intermediate or above. Next, we will announce the list of excellent apprentices. Those who are evaluated as excellent have the right to choose. You can choose your first teacher and second teacher. You can also choose to give up one of them after half a year and focus on one of them. The students who are evaluated as excellent are Nerman. Nerman, overall score, 90. The Arab youth sitting cross-legged on the stone bench smiled knowingly. Mia Semenovich, overall score, 93. When the short-haired girl who had distributed the herbal ointment heard her name, she played with her hair and smiled, unable to hide the joy in her heart. However, time passed by slowly. However, the name Nicholas was never uttered, as if it was unnecessary. Chapter 52. Practical. Han Dong's name was indeed on the excellent list. But the person in charge did not read it out loud because he received a temporary notice not to read out the name Warren Nicholas. The reason was unknown for the time being. At this time, another female teacher wearing a bird mask spoke. Now, starting from the qualified students, we will choose a mentor according to the order of the names just now. In addition, Warren Nicholas, there must be something wrong with your test. Come with me. Something wrong? The apprentice knights present thought that Han Dong, like the other 2 excellent students, was a gifted person who passed the test without any injuries. Now it seemed that he might have opportunistically passed the test, so he was taken away for re-evaluation. Immediately, some people began to discuss. I knew it, this person's clothes are obviously from the civilian area. How could he pass the single test without any injuries? Being taken away like this, he might not even have the chance to take the test. Being able to opportunistically pass the test is also a skill, isn't it? At least we can't think of any shortcut. The apprentice knights had different opinions about Han Dong's departure. The short-haired girl from the fighting tribe, who was proficient in herbology, smiled as she looked at Han Dong's back. She seemed to have a different opinion. The person who led Han Dong away was a female teacher. She wore a bird mask, a corset that exposed her navel, and a light long skirt. She also wore various metal accessories on her hand. From the delicate skin exposed, she was not old. Coming out of the meeting room, she took a special elevator with a star mark and went to the higher part of the tower. Warren Nicholas, excellent, overall score 95. The best student in this year's cohort. Do you know why you were asked to come out alone and not participate in the public mentor selection? I don't know. When your name was about to be read out, Mr. Black and White suddenly issued a special request to our senior division. He asked me to take you to the Star Observation Room, which is Mr. Black and White's private office. Mr. Black and White is looking for me? Yes, but it's very strange. Mr. Black and White deliberately asked us not to read out your score. It seems that he found some problems with your test. But even if there was a problem, we should be the ones to deal with it. Mr. Black and White shouldn't worry about such trivial matters. In Mr. Black and White's eyes, apprentice knights are still fledglings that can't fly on their own. He doesn't like to interact with them. You're a rare exception. Thank you. When the elevator arrived, a passage made of resplendent starlight glass appeared in front of Han Dong. The teacher leading the way lowered his head and brushed his beak across Han Dong's cheek. He whispered into Han Dong's ear, "It's a bit strange. Mr. Black and White asked me to go to the stargazing room with you. We have to pay attention to basic etiquette later. Mr. Black and White's temperament is fickle." Yes, Han Dong was not nervous. To be honest, he had a similar experience before. When he studied abroad, he was given a very high evaluation during his doctoral interview at the University of Florence. At that time, the Dean of the Life Sciences Academy asked to meet Han Dong alone after the interview. He considered letting Han Dong, an international student, stay in his research group and conduct cell research. Now, Han Dong needed to meet the highest leader of the mystery branch. The door at the end of the glass corridor had a simple diagram of the 12 houses of astrology printed on it. The door was about 5 meters high and did not look like it was prepared for humans. The female teacher seemed to have received Mr. Black and White's permission to enter. She placed her hands on the door, and with the addition of a light green power, the door was easily pushed open by her alone. Plague, when Han Dong saw the female teacher's ability, he seemed to understand why Mr. Black and White asked him to come with this teacher. When he pushed open the door, he had a strange feeling of stepping into the galaxy. The floor and walls were made of a type of flowing stone. Inside, there were small dots that looked like stars moving slowly. The hemispherical room created a strange feeling of the deep space of the universe. Half of the room was occupied by giant astronomical telescopes. A black-haired man in a white robe was sitting under the telescope and looking at the galaxy. Mr. Black and White, as per your orders, I brought this trainee knight to you. The teacher selection is still going on, and there are many good students this year. If I don't go now, he might be taken away by other teachers. The female teacher was still very concerned about the students. Her title was only a lecturer, and she lacked competitiveness with professors. She urgently needed talented students to work for her. Well, Pasha, don't worry about the students. I'll arrange it. Have a seat. Pasha? Han Dong was stunned. The Middle Eastern girl he met when he passed through the Dark Moon Forest also had this name. As soon as Mr. Black and White stood up, the originally galaxy-like room changed instantly. The stars converged and turned into a room with a strong European aristocratic atmosphere. The astronomical telescope was blocked. The hemispherical room shrank and turned into an ordinary rectangular room. There was a leather sofa, a kerosene lamp, and a black iron fireplace. It wasn't just a matter of optical refraction. Everything in this room was real. Han Dong couldn't understand such a scene change at all. The female teacher named Pasha seemed to be used to it. Since Mr. Black and White said so, she could only stay here. Pasha and Han Dong sat together on the leather sofa and took off their beak mask. She had healthy wheat-colored skin. She had shoulder-length black hair. She wore light black eyeshadow. She had 3 metal nose rings on her high nose. Her slightly raised cheekbones added a beauty's temperament, making her more attractive to the eyes. This image reminded Han Dong of the Middle Eastern girl he teamed up with in the Dark Moon Forest. She looked exactly like an adult. Could it be that all of this is Mr. Black and White's arrangement? Han Dong didn't dare to make wild guesses. The result would be known soon. Mr. Black and White walked over and sat on a single leather chair, facing the two of them. Mr. Black and White was wearing a black smiley face mask, so his face couldn't be seen. Pasha, you haven't seen this kid's test process, right? Under the mask, there was a double voice that was forceful, elegant, and magnetic. From the basic understanding of the data, he defeated the stitched object head-on, eliminated interference, passed the test in a short time, and his temperament conformed to the mysticism values. He received an excellent rating of 95 points. It's not that simple. Take a look at the video. Mr. Black and White took out a crystal ball from his sleeve. The whole test process was recorded inside. When Lecturer Pasha saw the little girl covered in dirt, she was shocked. She couldn't help but touch the scar on her ankle. Chapter 53. Mr. Black and White. I don't understand. Why did you copy my previous test experience? Mr. Black and White casually drew 2 intersecting lines of stars in the air. Intersecting lines of fate. When I was watching the stars last night, I accidentally saw your intersecting lines of fate. I can't see the future of the intersecting lines, so I did this on purpose. What do you think? Are you satisfied with this test result? Lecturer Pasha. A complete copy. Pasha didn't know how Mr. Black and White copied her past experience. Pasha's face didn't change much, but her heart was a little shaken. She used to be like this. Back then, she didn't have any combat skills. She wanted to team up with other apprentice knights to pass the test, but her ankle was cut and she lost her ability to move while passing through the dark moon forest. Her teammates didn't hesitate at all and abandoned her. When she was attacked by monsters, she thought she was going to die, but when she woke up, she was already in the infirmary of the wizard tower. She failed the test, but the mystery branch was very short of people, so she stayed. However, no instructor was willing to teach her with such a result. Without any resources, Pasha persevered in the darkest place with her unique talent and perseverance. In the end, she was acknowledged by Mr. Black and White, and became a member of the Knights of Pestilence. She stayed in the academy as a teacher. It sounded like a very inspirational story, but not many people knew how much pain Pasha endured and how much despair she went through to climb up from the bottom. She definitely thought of suicide more than 10 times. In the test screen in the crystal ball, Mr. Black and White deliberately deleted Han Dong's last answer. Overall, it looked like Han Dong was willing to stay to protect Pasha and pass the test together. Okay. Pasha maintained a serious expression as a teacher and returned the crystal ball to Mr. Black and White. Mr. Black and White, you mean that I'll teach this excellent apprentice knight? Yes, you'll be the first instructor and I'll be the second. What? Sir, you said the wrong order, right? Pasha thought she had misheard. If they were to adopt the dual mentorship model, no matter what, she would be the second mentor. How could Mr. Black and White be behind her? I'm just a figurehead. Occasionally, I'll guide you on the details. Pasha, you are Nicholas's main mentor. You are in charge of introducing him to a deeper understanding of mysticism. Both you and Nicholas are proficient in plague, and because of the intersecting lines of fate, it's very suitable for you to lead him in the early stages. Nicholas, are you willing? When Mr. Black and White turned around, Han Dong quickly replied, yes. Mr. Black and White continued asking, you're only good at plague-type abilities? This question made Han Dong tremble in fear. Especially when he stared at the black mask, he had a feeling that his heart was being seen through. Han Dong was very worried that in front of such a person, his secret would be exposed. Yes. Han Dong maintained his composure and nodded. Then there's no problem. Although there are a few masters in the mysticism branch who are proficient in plague, Lecturer Pasha is definitely the most suitable to guide you. As for resources, as long as you perform well enough, I'll directly allocate resources to you. Thank you, Mr. Black and White. Han Dong knew very well how important this sentence was. The dean would directly allocate resources. In other words, as long as Han Dong met the expected requirements, the department would provide him with whatever he wanted. Pasha, do you have any questions? If not, I'll talk to Nicholas later and have him fill out the relevant information in your office. No problem. When Pasha got up and left, she deliberately turned her head to look at the weak freshman Han Dong. She had mixed feelings. Click. When the door closed, only Han Dong and Mr. Black and White were left in the room. Can I take a closer look at your right arm? Under such circumstances, could Han Dong refuse? He could only stretch out his arm. Yes. It's a pure ghoul arm without any sutures. It's as if it grew naturally on your body. Even the suturing professor in my department can't do such a flawless suture. Mr. Black and White's words made Han Dong break out in a cold sweat. The secret in your body is more troublesome than any trainee knight I've ever seen. I can't even divine or observe your future. However, if even I can't see through your disguise, no one in the holy city can. You're not Warren Nicholas, are you? No, but I'm also a human. Han Dong's answer was very decisive. In front of such a person, hiding anything would only worsen the situation. Han Dong immediately shifted his focus to the word human to emphasize his position. A very smart answer, But you don't have to worry too much. No matter what you are, as long as your position is correct, I'll treat you as a normal trainee knight. Now, I need you to answer a question. What is your position? What my nature is what my position is. Okay, Mr. Black and White continued to ask. Congratulations on becoming a member of the mystery branch. Do you want to announce your results on the bulletin boards on each floor? If possible, you don't have to announce it. Just announce that I passed the test. Just as Mr. Black and White was worried, it's best if I don't attract too much attention. Well, you're quite capable to be able to hide from the interviewers and investigators. Now that you're my student, I'll provide you with any resources you need as long as you can reach your goal. Speaking of which, I have to tell you about a short-term and important goal. Okay. Han Dong listened very carefully. After becoming a trainee knight, you still have to go to the Destiny Realm regularly. Every branch has a certain target. If you can't reach it, the allocation of resources in the branch will be relatively reduced. Although the target for the mystery branch isn't high, due to the small number of new students, the next Destiny Realm won't have enough people. You need to prepare in a short period of time. A short period of time? How long? About 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Han Dong planned to spend half a semester studying the mystery branch seriously and learn some basic skills. After learning the ability to conceal and explain summoned creatures, he would go to the Destiny Realm. At that time, he would be able to summon Miss Chun-Li to help him. The current situation put Han Dong in a very difficult position. That's a short period of time. It is indeed very short. But if you agree, I can grant you a wish as long as it doesn't exceed a certain limit. Mr. Black and White, can I give you an answer in a week? Han Dong wanted to see his learning progress in a week before making a decision. No. I have to make a decision now. I have a condition. Say it. I hope that in these 2 weeks, in addition to learning the Plague branch from Lecturer Pasha, I can also learn related skills related to summoning. Chapter 54. His position and identity had been revealed. Mr. Black and White only cared about Han Dong's position. Through astrology, he could roughly see Han Dong's nature and knew that he was on the side of humans. Therefore, he did not ask how Han Dong came to be and would even help him hide his identity to a certain extent. However, Han Dong still had some reservations. When he talked about wanting to learn summoning abilities, he did not let Chun-Li out, because there was an important reason, and that was that Chun-Li came from the Destiny Realm. Mr. Black and White might be able to observe Chun-Li's origin through astrology. Before Han Dong figured out the Destiny Realm, it was not good to expose it. You want to learn summoning abilities? Yes. Han Dong had already thought of an excuse. I saw the stitches in the test before, and I feel that this kind of corpse control is quite good. Although my body is supported by a ghoul arm, my overall body is still not very good. If I have a summoned creature to help me, it can greatly make up for my shortcomings. Mr. Black and White said, the control school is more proficient in summoning and controlling creatures, spirits, and ghosts. The mystery school is not as good as them in this aspect. 2 weeks is not a long time. If you want to learn, you must first have a good foundation in Plague, and then come to me to learn summoning. If you get distracted and fail to accomplish anything in these 2 weeks, you will die without a burial ground in the next Destiny Realm. The Destiny Realm as an apprentice knight is much more difficult than a novice knight. You should understand, right? Yes. Mr. Black and White continued, as for your ghoul arm, you can explain it to outsiders in 4 words. Plague variant. No one will look into it, because the mystery school is able to perfectly sew a ghoul arm onto a living creature. Okay. When you have a sufficient understanding of mysticism, have sufficient knowledge reserves and abilities, and can fully explain the relevant abilities you possess, you can no longer worry about the problem of exposure. You can announce your name to the holy city. Keeping a low profile could save you a lot of trouble. Fame and reputation could also bring you unimaginable benefits and convenience. He had to weigh the pros and cons of the two. No matter what, he had to maintain his position. For the sake of humanity's freedom, I'll give up everything I have. All right. Thank you, Mr. Black and White. Thank you again. With Mr. Black and White's help, the chances of Han Dong's identity being exposed were very low. He just needed to be more careful. As long as you complete Pasha's daily request, you can come to the stargazing room to find me at any time. I'll be there all day. By the way, Mr. Black and White, how do I get to Ms. Pasha's office? Following Han Dong's question, a strange scene occurred. Black Mask spat out a black feather from its mouth. The crow feather floating in the air turned into a black crow and stopped on Han Dong's shoulder. It will take you there. In a short time, you have to familiarize yourself with the detailed structure of the Dark Moon Tower. Don't waste too much time on it. Alright. The conversation ended here. The 2-week time limit had been set. Han Dong had to save every second. He had to have a detailed plan for the rest of the time. After Han Dong left, the room changed back to the appearance of space. When Mr. Black and White got up and walked to the astronomical telescope, he took out a white mask and looked at the black mask he was wearing. At this time, the lips of the white mask squirmed on their own and made an ethereal sound, crow. You're a little abnormal today. All along, you've been uninterested in these apprentice nights. Even the suturing genius who got 99 points 2 years ago, you only heard about him from the side. Why are you so concerned about this kid today? The black mask said, since even your astrology can't see through the apprentice night, I'll naturally take a gamble. If he can really adapt to everything in 2 weeks, learn the basic plague skills, and even learn some beginner summoning skills from me. Once he can successfully pass the true meaning of the destiny space, I can fully cultivate him. The white mask said in surprise, just because I can't see through this apprentice knight's fate? That's right. Since you can't see through it, it means that his fate might not belong to our world. It's necessary to take a gamble on this. It's just a waste of some resources. As long as he's on the side of humans, we won't lose anything. Who knows what will happen in the future? The conversation ended. Mr. Black and White changed his mask. After changing into the white mask, his temperament and walking posture changed. He walked slowly to the astronomical telescope and continued to observe the universe. Han Dong, who took the elevator down, showed a rare smile. The biggest stone in his heart was finally put down. In this world full of magic and psionic abilities, there were countless people with special abilities. Han Dong might be able to fool them once, but he might not be able to fool them a second time. Now, the highest authority in the mystery branch acknowledged Han Dong's existence. The future would be much easier. 2 weeks. The destiny space will descend again. The first person Han Dong thought of was the apprentice knight, Cass Maldini, who had formed a temporary team with him a few days ago to complete the ghoul incident. After receiving the bounty, Cass had made it clear that he wanted to continue forming a team with Han Dong, including the subsequent bounty missions and the destiny space. I can contact Cass in advance and continue to use the fake name Andwa. I can pretend to be an apprentice knight who has been in the Mystery Academy for a year and form a team with him. The Crusader who has already obtained 3 destiny points should know more. Under the guidance of the crow, the elevator descended to the first floor of the tower. Immediately after, he needed to take another special elevator. The walls of the elevator were stained with sticky fungus. Teacher Pasha's office isn't in the tower? She mainly studies the plague. Could it be? At this moment, Han Dong suddenly remembered the mystery branch subsidiary area that the cemetery butler had mentioned. Old sewer. According to the cemetery butler, this subsidiary area was dangerous and recommended Han Dong not to go there. It descended about 100 meters. The elevator reached the bottom. An underground area filled with pale yellow light appeared in front of Han Dong. The pale yellow light didn't come from the kerosene lamp. It was a large number of fluorescent bacteria that stuck to the walls of the sewer. The largest luminous tissue was even the size of an arm, like a giant pustule. The spores floating in the air then spread the yellow light to various areas of the sewer. Colorful fungi could be seen in the cracks of the walls. Even some of the rats that wandered around here had mushrooms growing on their bodies. Their bodies were also larger than the average rat. Some mutated insects had bodies and strange postures that were beyond the understanding of ordinary people. Ordinary people will only become nutrients for the fungi in this environment. Just as Han Dong was thinking about how to step into this area, caw, caw, the crow on his shoulder cried out. The crow transformed into a living bird mask and took the initiative to wear it on Han Dong's face. The crow feather transformed into a black robe that could isolate the fungi in the old sewer from the outside. Chapter 55. What kind of ability is this? When the crow transformed into the birdbeak doctor suit, Han Dong's reverence for Mr. Black and White increased by another level. A crow feather spat out from his mouth could transform into an intelligent crow, and it could even evolve into a suit. At the same time, Han Dong also took out the plague doctor's dagger. With this outfit, he really looked like a medieval doctor of death. Taking out the weapon of destiny, Han Dong only wanted to test if the weapon had a unique effect in this special environment. When Han Dong gently shook the dagger, he found that the fungal spores floating in the air automatically gathered and covered the blade, increasing the damage of the next attack. In addition, perhaps because Han Dong was holding a special dagger or wearing a special birdbeak doctor suit, the creatures in the old sewer also tried to avoid Han Dong as much as possible. According to the guidance signs on the surface covered with mushrooms, bypassing the complicated sewer passages, they crossed a pool of bubbling, skull-shaped bacteria that emitted poisonous gas, turning corners where giant spotted mushrooms grew. Finally, he arrived in front of an iron door with the sign Fungus and Mushroom Research Lab, Pasha Bahart. Han Dong used 100% of the ghoul's power to be able to turn the hydraulic turntable and open the iron door. Passing through an isolation passage and spraying a large amount of disinfectant, Han Dong finally arrived at the first mentor's office. It was simple and clean. A desk with all kinds of documents and potions. A wooden bookcase stood against the wall. A large number of books about plague were listed in it. Strange magic circles and drawings related to the human body were pasted on the wall. There was also a wooden bed placed in the corner of the wall. For the time being, he did not see any experimental equipment used for fungus research. Thinking about it, the laboratory should be separated from the personal office. Teacher Pasha wore a pair of copper-framed glasses and was writing some information in front of the wooden table. When Han Dong came in, she did not turn around. She only asked coldly, "Why did Mr. Black and White ask you to stay behind?" Han Dong briefly explained the situation. When he mentioned the 2-week time limit, Teacher Pasha immediately stopped writing and turned her head with a frown. "What? 2 weeks? To send you to your death?" Pasha looked at it from her own experience. In order to enter the real destiny realm, even if it wasn't a semester, it would at least take half a semester to prepare. Only by learning and grasping the most basic of mysticism would he have the capital to enter the destiny realm. During this period, he would also have to prepare the best resources and adjust himself to the best state. Otherwise, only death would await him. Ms. Pasha calmed herself down and continued speaking. This is also Mr. Black and White's arrangement. He must have his reasons. Time is too short. Let's begin the study of the plague today. Don't go back to the student dormitory for the next 2 weeks. Just stay in the office. Pasha pointed at the wooden bed. Then, what about you, teacher? I'll sleep with you. Han Dong was stunned. His thoughts were affected to a certain extent. Pasha quickly corrected him. What I mean is, you sleep on this wooden bed. I'll sleep in the break room next door. Teacher Pasha, do you have any other students under your name? When Pasha was asked this, she coughed twice to hide her embarrassment. Ahem. I have high expectations for my students. Many of them are unable to adapt to the harsh environment of the old sewers. Even if they have a certain level of talent in the study of the plague, they are unwilling to come down here to study. They prefer to stay in the wizard tower and follow the professors. In fact, it could be summed up in a simple sentence. Low qualifications, poor environment, and high expectations. How could they recruit students like this? In this way, Han Dong could be considered Pasha Bahart's first student and the first member of the research team. At this moment, Pasha caught a glimpse of the dagger in Han Dong's left hand. When she saw the green aura covering the blade, she was shocked. A plague attribute destiny weapon. Where did you get it? I hope Teacher Pasha can keep this a secret. I hid this matter when I entered the school. Plague Doctor's dagger, a hidden reward from the first Destiny event. Hidden event. Pasha knew what it meant. Destiny events were extremely dangerous. To discover and take the time to complete a hidden event in such a dangerous environment required great personal ability. Pasha had never seen anyone who could obtain a Destiny weapon in a newbie event. Not bad. Pasha tried her best to suppress her surprise. She had never heard of a trainee knight who could complete a hidden event in a newbie event. She also gradually understood why Mr. Black and White paid special attention to Han Dong. Just like this, the two began to chat about some basic information to get to know each other. When they talked about Han Dong's understanding of the plague, Han Dong brought out part of his memories about pathology and mycology. To be honest, when it came to basic scientific knowledge, Han Dong was definitely better than Lecturer Pasha. When it came to understanding fungi and bacteria, however, what Han Dong needed to learn now was not basic knowledge, but how to use the power of the plague. Therefore, when Han Dong explained his understanding of the plague, he held back. He only talked about some superficial knowledge. You have some knowledge. You can save a lot of time, Pasha admitted. Next, just as Han Dong was about to explain the ghoul's arm, a voice suddenly rang out. He changed into a crow again and spoke in Mr. Black and White's voice. He directly explained Han Dong's situation and asked Pasha to keep it a secret with his identity as the dean. This way, Han Dong did not have to explain. Okay, Mr. Black and White. Only 2 weeks? Yes, within 2 weeks, make sure Nicholas is proficient in using the ghoul arm. At the same time, let him use the true power of the Destiny weapon. Also, teach him a basic plague control technique. Okay. After the communication, the crow looked at Han Dong with its black eyes. I thought about it and decided to use this crow as your goggles. After the soul binding with you, the crow will completely break away from my connection. It can switch between the living crow and the beak costume on its own. Thank you, Mr. Black and White. After saying that, the crow flew to Han Dong's wrist. It used its sharp beak to poke Han Dong's fingertip and drank a drop of blood to establish a permanent connection. At the same time, a black feather mark appeared on the back of Han Dong's hand. He could control this special crow with his mind. This meant that the crow had become Han Dong's possession and had completely cut off its connection with Mr. Black and White. At this moment, the serious atmosphere in the office suddenly changed. Lecturer Pasha, who was sitting dignified and smiling all the time, suddenly revealed a strange smile. She deliberately messed up her hair. From the bottom drawer of her desk, she took out a bottle of homemade white wine and 2 clean wine glasses. She casually shook off her high heels. She even propped her long legs up on the desk. After a deputy leader finished monitoring the situation of the staff, who were slacking off, her moist tongue slid between her lips as if she couldn't wait to taste the wine. She no longer looked like a dignified teacher. Coupled with Pasha's high-quality face and beautiful figure, this image immediately gave off a lot of sexy attribute. She poured a full glass of wine and handed it to Han Dong. "Do you want to drink? Alcohol is my savior who allowed me to survive in the old sewer. I've never believed in religion, I only believe in alcohol." Chapter 56. What Bullsh *T test? What Bullsh *T night rules? What Bullsh *T black and white? No. Mr. Black and White is very good to me. I can't scold him, burp. No one cares about me, but I still became a knight and a teacher of the mystery branch. Her true nature was exposed. After drinking, Pasha Harbut was a completely different person from before. Even Han Dong was stunned. Moreover, this white wine also had a big problem. It actually tasted like white wine with a bitter taste. Han Dong suspected that the white wine's alcohol content was above 50 degrees, and it really had a certain antiseptic effect. Drinking it would make him feel like he was going to kill someone. Pasha, who was blushing, hugged Han Dong with her arms, and their faces were almost touching. "Why don't you drink? I brewed this myself. If you don't drink it, you're disrespecting me, a genius teacher in plague science." As mentioned earlier, Pasha's figure could be considered as a model's. Han Dong had never experienced such intimate contact with a woman of the same age. Even though Han Dong's body was very weak, he still had the necessary physiological reaction. Teacher, with my body, if I drink wine of this alcohol content, I might directly die." "How can you be so weak? Let me check." After saying that, she didn't allow Han Dong to resist. With an inhuman strength, Pasha directly took off Han Dong's shirt. There were many dents on his yellowed skin, and the ribs were clearly visible. Her delicate palm moved back and forth on the surface of his body, especially the touch of her fingertips, which made Han Dong's mind a mess. "Burp. Your body is too weak, right? If you drink it, you might really die. How boring. My first student can't even drink with me." After this intimate contact, Han Dong, a reserved man in his 30s, couldn't help but blush. "However, although your body is weak, your ability isn't weak. You're not like me back then." She drank too much. In addition, she was always alone in the old sewer, for research and self-improvement. Loneliness was inevitable. Han Dong was her first student, and Han Dong's special test reminded her of some things in the past. The effect of alcohol made Pasha dig out some things that she had suppressed in her heart. She loosened her arms around Han Dong. Pasha returned to her desk with the bottle of wine. Due to her body heating up from drinking, Pasha actually took out a pair of scissors from the drawer and trimmed her black trousers into a pair of shorts on the spot. Her slender and fair legs were propped up on the desk. However, there was a small flaw on this seemingly perfect handicraft. Han Dong noticed that there was a cut scar on Pasha's ankle that was difficult to remove. Pasha went on drinking and talked about the past. "Back then, I wasn't treated as well as you were. Entering the mystery branch with a failed test result and with a shortage of people. Haha. No teacher would be willing to take in a useless student like me." Han Dong also recalled his previous test experience. The setting of the interference item was based on Pasha's previous test. Han Dong asked curiously, "Teacher Pasha, you were originally good at divination, right?" Divination is a very important branch of the mystery branch. It can predict the future and know the enemy's location. Did you give it up because there was no one to take you in? Pasha replied with an indifferent expression, "Yes, divination requires a large amount of resources as a foundation, a large number of books to read, and a divination teacher to guide you. A useless student like me couldn't understand divination through any channels, and I couldn't even get a share of the resources. If I insisted on following my heart, I would have died in the destiny space sooner or later. The best choice was to give up the opportunity to study in the academy and go to the civilian district to become a sheriff. If I was lucky, I could find a good job in the church or the union. It wasn't easy for me to climb out of the civilian district. I didn't want to go back just like that. The only thing I could do was to find another way. I chose the most difficult and dangerous field of epidemiology. At that time, very few people came to the old sewer. Only some professors would take samples here, and I took advantage of this opportunity. Now that I think about it, it wasn't easy to live until now. Thanks to this wine. While speaking, Pasha began to drink again. As she talked about the past, unforgettable images flashed through her mind. Due to insufficient protection, it led to a subcutaneous fungal infection. At the most serious time, there were even small umbrella-shaped fungi growing on the surface of her skin. She also had the experience of being infected by the plague. If it wasn't for the Mystery Academy's special treatment for the plague, she would have died long ago. These memories kept flashing in her mind. A nosebleed mixed with bacteria flowed out of Pasha's nostrils. She quickly wiped the blood with a tissue. Her body also felt a little uncomfortable. She shook her dizzy head and looked at Han Dong. You can find some books related to epidemiology in the bookcase and self-study for a while. I'm a little uncomfortable. Immediately after, Lecturer Pasha pushed open the iron door of the lounge and walked in swaying. Han Dong was still a little worried about his first instructor. Unexpectedly, as soon as Pasha entered, she directly fell on the big, soft bed. Simultaneously, a series of loud snoring sounds that didn't match her body shape came out. She fell asleep instantly. Han Dong felt a little helpless with such an instructor. She said she would seize the time to study, but in the end, she drank too much and fell asleep. Han Dong quietly entered the lounge, covered Pasha with a blanket, and took the white tissue in her hand that she had just wiped away the nosebleed. Even without a microscope, he could see the bacteria community mixed in the blood with the naked eye. If it was an ordinary person, with such a high amount of bacteria in their blood, they would have died long ago, right? Could it be that a bacterial ecosystem has formed in Lecturer Pasha's body? Is this the result of specializing in the epidemiology? This situation made Han Dong even more curious about the epidemiology. After leaving the lounge, he took out the books related to the epidemiologies from the bookshelf and began self-study. Some of the concepts about the epidemiology in the books were different. They fused supernatural knowledge with the basic knowledge Han Dong understood. In the first chapter, they began to talk about the knowledge related to plague control. Moreover, on the first page, Han Dong learned a very important concept. Due to the distribution of fate points, the concept of the unknown energy ball appeared in his mind. The professional term given in the book was seed. For a time, Han Dong was completely immersed in the textbook, Epidemiology, Complete Edition, published by the National Royal Knight Academy and written by the former dean of the Mystery Branch. Han Dong had a unique talent when it came to reading scientific research papers. Chapter 57. Its full academic name was The Seed of Destiny, The Seed of Destiny. It was called Seed for the rest of the book. When a novice passes a destiny event for the first time and chooses their main class, points will be distributed. The instrument of destiny will complete the seed in the main body. Different main classes will have different corresponding seed. In addition, each person's personality is different and their future development is different. This will also affect the internal structure of the seed. The seed is the foundation of a novice knight. It means how the individual will develop in the future. At the same time, it is also an energy storage tank. Every time a mysterious ability is used, including divination, stitching, and plague, a part of the seed's energy will be extracted. As the fate points are distributed, the seed will be able to store more and more energy. When the number of fate points invested in the main class reaches 5. The seed will sprout and enter the next stage. The current chapter is the basics and will not be explained in detail. There are two ways to replenish the seed's energy. One is to absorb it from the same source. For example, if you are proficient in plague-type abilities, you can absorb energy from organisms that are infected with diseases. The other is to replenish oneself. For example, a divination-type ability can absorb energy from the stars in the universe at a specific time. With the development of abilities or the wearing of special destiny equipment, more energy replenishment methods can be obtained. For example, forced absorption, automatic recovery, and other abilities. Special note in the Novice Knight stage, once the seed's energy is exhausted, it will not be able to use any magic or abilities. Please pay special attention to the remaining energy in the process of battle. The opening chapter of Plague Studies gave a detailed explanation of the energy in Han Dong's head. The Seed of Destiny. According to the book, once 5 fate points are invested, the seed will sprout and grow into the so-called talent tree. Of course, it is also possible that there is a transition between the seed and the talent tree. Han Dong finally understood the meaning of the mysterious energy in his head. Next, he needed to learn how to use the seed's energy. Currently, I can use the dagger as a medium to convert the seed's energy into the plague attribute and shoot it out from the tip of the dagger. Let's continue learning. Han Dong's way of reading was very strange. He needed to prepare a notebook at the same time. The study book was placed on his left hand and the notebook on his right. With a pen in his right hand would automatically record key words and important sentences in the notebook to deepen his understanding and memory of the important knowledge. Original text of the book Plague was one of the most offensive branches of mysticism. Dedicated to the research of highly pathogenic microorganisms. Most of them were fungi, with very few plague researchers touching on bacteria or the more elusive viruses. Due to the limitations of modern scientific development, the development of microscopy was only at the stage of light microscopy. It was difficult to analyze cells, let alone observe viruses. Once the knights learned how to control the fungus, they would be able to apply the plague attribute to every attack they made. When they cut the enemy apart, the plague would further inflict damage to their bodies. At the same time, he could also control the fungi to investigate and explore a small area. Or, they could specialize in fungal poison gas and use their staffs to attack from a distance, ignoring the enemy's outer armor and directly attacking the body. Next, we are going to talk about plague control. Before entering the school, beginners had to be divided into 2 categories. The first category belonged to novice knights who had never come into contact with the plague. Before learning, you need to place yourself in the presence of pathogenic fungi, exceeding 300 Simpson's number, dimensionless unit used to measure the number of pathogenic fungi in a unit space. These beginners had to infect themselves with at least 3 types of subcutaneous or systemic fungal diseases. They did not use any external medical means. They only relied on the energy of the body and the seeds to adapt to the diseases. In this painful process, the body gradually adapted to the fungi and formed a diverse fungal environment in the body. It was called fungal body for short. Once such a body was achieved, the subsequent plague training could begin. The second category belonged to novice knights who had come into contact with the plague, had been seriously infected by the plague and healed themselves, or carried the plague ability. These beginners already had a hidden or partial fungal body and needed to be activated. The specific method was determined according to their own condition. If it could not be activated, please use the first entry method. In general, entry was to form a fungal body. Although Ghoul's arm and Plague Doctor's dagger belonged to the plague category, Han Dong did not intend to just hang on a tree. Not to mention the 5 major professions. In mysticism alone, there were plague, divination, suture, and even some academic branches that Han Dong did not know about. Han Dong, who had the ability to collect cell essence, could fully consider multidimensional development. Plague. I only need the right arm to have this ability. I still have other plans for the other parts of the body. Han Dong had a strict plan for the future and was very clear about what he should do at this stage. Ghoul's arm already matches the description of the plague body in the book. I only need to focus on this arm and practice. After completing the detailed reading of Basic Plague Control, Han Dong changed into the bird-beak doctor suit and deliberately exposed his right arm. He returned to the outer area of the old sewer, the fungal community covering the wall, the bacterial spores floating in the air. Wasn't this the best place for plague training? He slowly raised his right arm and recalled the relevant explanations in the book. Han Dong focused on his arm and tried to build a connection with the fungal plague in the environment. The energy of the seed began to slowly deplete. In the office, Lecturer Pasha, who was drunk and had caused the bacterial colonies in her body to become chaotic, slowly woke up after adjusting her body condition in her sleep. Where did Nicholas go? Pasha stretched her body and walked out of the lounge. At a glance, she saw the open plague books and dense English notes on the desk. She followed the lingering scent in the air and walked out of the office. The scene in that old sewer made Pasha's eyes widen. She was no longer sleepy. Han Dong stood 3 meters away from her. With Han Dong as the center, the mycelium on the ground wrapped around his trousers. There were even a few small mushrooms growing on the end of his leather shoes. The most shocking thing was Han Dong's right arm. The pores on the skin of his arm were in an open shape. It was similar to oral breathing. The open pores were slowly absorbing the fungal spores in the air to replenish the energy consumed during the plague control. After Pasha came to the old sewer and achieved the initial stage of plague body, it took her 3 days to learn the basic plague control. Han Dong, on the other hand, completed all of this in the few hours she was sleeping. Chapter 58. Pasha was a little surprised at first, but after taking a closer look, she found that there was a problem. This kid hasn't fully formed the plague physique yet. He's just using this ghoul arm to control the plague. That's right. It's impossible to fully form the plague physique and master the plague in 2 weeks. Just like Mr. Black and White said, just focus on his arm and carry out targeted training. They waited for about half an hour. All kinds of bacteria slowly faded from Han Dong's body. This period of time passed in the blink of an eye for Han Dong, who was completely immersed in plague control. Pasha held a wine bottle in one hand and waved at Han Dong with the other. Not bad. You've learned the most basic plague control by yourself. Come here and let me take a closer look at your arm. Okay. In the following time. Thus, Han Dong followed Pasha and learned how to use plague knowledge. Pasha's unique understanding of plague control was something that couldn't be found in book. After a day of solo instruction, Pasha was exhausted. This underground office had been transformed into a personal living area by Pasha. There was even a bathroom with a water pipe from inside the tower. You're not going to rest. Lecturer Pasha didn't care too much. She walked out of the bathroom with a towel wrapped around her and a wine bottle in one hand. She walked to the dormitory and found that Han Dong had no intention of sleeping at all. He was reading seriously at the desk and his right hand was taking quick notes at the same time. Han Dong didn't even turn his head to look at such a beautiful scenery. Well, Teacher Pasha, you can sleep first. I'm used to solving the problem before sleeping. Smack. All of a sudden, a bottle of red wine fell on the table and interrupted Han Dong's thoughts. Low-alcohol wine. Your body should be fine. You're my student, so you have to learn to drink. Otherwise, the next few years will be boring. Drink a little when you're reading. It'll also have a refreshing effect. Okay. Han Dong's thoughts were interrupted, so he turned his head and glanced over. His line of sight happened to be at the same level as the indescribable part below the neck. How much could a towel wrap around? Moreover, Han Dong had never been so close to a girl in 30 years, let alone a young female teacher who had a good figure and appearance and was only wrapped in a towel. For a moment, Han Dong's mind was a little blank. He quickly turned his head. Haha, so you're focused on reading. Remember to drink. I'm going to sleep. Seeing Han Dong's shy reaction, Pasha left as she wished. The indescribable beauty took root in Han Dong's mind and refused to dissipate, affecting his thoughts. Suddenly, Han Dong used the substitution method to change his state of mind. Let's not. Wait a minute. Wasn't the outline just 3? If the dimensionless parameter of pestilence constitution is 300, then... Han Dong completed his thought process and continued to immerse himself in the sea of knowledge. This kid lecturer Pasha leaned against the door of the lounge and stole glances at Han Dong while drinking. Maybe he's really different. Han Dong was a straight-A student. Once he started studying, it was common for him to forget about food and sleep. Staying up late and working overtime was nothing. Once he felt that his spirit could not keep up, he would fall into a deep sleep. He was very good at controlling his studies. He maintained a high intensity of study and training. In the blink of an eye, a week had passed in the old sewer. National Royal Knight Academy, Adventurers Guild, every day, there would be an endless stream of trainee knights coming here. Most of them were above 2 stars, 2 stars meaning that they were allocated 2 fate points. The following abbreviations will be used as such. They checked to see if there were any missions suitable for them. There were 2 types of missions. One was the completely clear category. Professionals had already conducted a detailed inspection of the mission location. All the detailed mission information was written on the bounty list. There would not be any major deviation. There were fewer missions of this type. Once it was announced, it would be snatched up in an instant. The other was the unclear category. Most of them were sudden emergencies. There was only some superficial information from the local Public Security Bureau. The bounty list that was drawn up at the last minute would often have major deviations. There were more missions of this type. Due to the large variability in difficulty, there were relatively few people who accepted them. The last mission that Cass and Han Dong completed together belonged to the second category. Today, 3-star Crusader Cass Maldini came here again. The silver armor on his body had been completely repaired. However, the purpose of this visit was not only to see if there were any suitable missions. He also wanted to meet a group of friends. After all, the next Destiny Realm would open in a week. 3-star Crusader, a silver-level adventurer, Cass was already a famous trainee knight. He temporarily occupied the private room on the 2nd floor of the Adventurers Guild and waited for the arrival of his friends. Brother Cass. Not long after, a blonde girl with wavy hair knocked on the door and entered. Behind her was a holy crystal staff that was taller than her height. 3-star a library, a girl who was good at holy light spells. She had once cleared the Destiny Realm with Cass. At first glance, this girl was more of an auxiliary healer. When the girl saw the handsome blonde knight Cass, her cheeks immediately blushed. Fea, are you used to using the weapon of destiny? Fea stuck out her tongue. Of course, I can now do 3 points in a line and cast holy light spells through the enhancement of the staff. Then, Fea sat on the seat next to Cass with some embarrassment. The two of them had worked together in 2 Destiny realms and had complete trust in each other. Just as Fea was about to whisper something. Dong dong dong. There was a knock on the door. Then, a metal boy with brown hair and cool goggles poked his head out. He was wearing a relatively exaggerated metal ornament and various metal protective equipment. However, the most eye-catching was a self-made sniper rifle. The scope could achieve an optical magnification of 4 times. The accuracy was also strictly controlled and corrected. The young man was not very tall, only about 1.65 meters. He was also a 3-star mechanic and was good at making firearms and long-range shooting. Captain Cass, Sister Faya. Kos Lin, long time no see. Cass hurriedly got up to greet them. Kos Lin was a genius. Cass could tell from the first time they worked together. Kos Lin could meticulously make various precision mechanical props to deal with the situation at any time, greatly increasing the team's adaptability. Captain, you didn't call anyone else? I met a friend during one of the ghouls. He was only a 2-star magician. I want to ask for your opinion on whether we should invite him to join us in this Destiny Realms event. 2-star? What does he specialize in? Mysticism. When he said this, even Faya, who had a good impression of Cass, was full of doubts. Mysticism had a very wide range of positions, and mysticism scholars did not have much use before they became true knights. Kos Lin considered that this was the captain's suggestion and spoke more tactfully. Boss Cass. A 2-star mysticism scholar is only a little stronger than normal people in terms of perception, right? I think it's better to call this person over and let everyone get to know each other. Before we go to the Destiny Realms, we can understand his true strength through the bounty mission. If he really has the ability, then let him join us. Chapter 59. Probiotic Fungus Culture Room. This was an experimental culture room built by Lecturer Pasha alone. Unlike the pathogenic fungi in the old sewers, the fungi here were beneficial to the human body. Han Dong had been lying in the fungus culture room for a whole day. There was only one purpose: strengthening the body. This was what Han Dong had discussed with Lecturer Pasha 2 days ago through books and book. He came up with a way to temporarily make up for the weak body. That was to control the fungi and let these probiotic fungi temporarily take root in Han Dong's body. Add a protective layer of fungi on the surface of the organs to enhance the activity and protect the organs. Add tough mycelium between the muscles to strengthen the interaction between the muscle cells. Integrate a kind of slippery spores into the blood to increase the permeability of the blood vessels and the efficiency of oxygen transmission in the blood. It sounded very high-end, and the operation was also very complicated. The risk of letting the probiotic bacteria take root in the body was not small. The final result was that Han Dong's physique was barely improved to that of an ordinary person. The result seemed to be worth it. At least Han Dong would not be out of breath after running 2 steps or sweating after waving his fists twice. It seems not to be a big improvement, but it's actually very meaningful for me. Just as Han Dong walked out of the laboratory, the clockwork device on his wrist vibrated. There were only 3 people that Han Dong had given his contact information: Cass, Lecturer Pasha, and his sister Nina. Hello, who is this? Friend Andwa, it's great to hear your voice. I have a mission with a high bounty here. Are you interested in cooperating? The final reward is estimated to be about the same as the last time we accidentally discovered the ghoul's lair, and there are additional rewards. If it was someone else's invitation, Han Dong would not go as he was currently in a critical period of learning. But Cass was different. A week later in the Destiny Realm, Han Dong had decided to form a team with Cass, who he was familiar with and had a certain level of strength. It would be good to meet him in advance. It just so happened that the probiotic body was completed and he was free. Where do we meet? Come to the Adventurers Guild. I'll wait for you here. This is a medium-sized mission that needs to be discussed in advance. Okay, wait for me for a while. Put away the device. Due to Han Dong's rapid progress, which far exceeded Pasha's expectations, it didn't matter if she took a day off. You have to be back on time before tomorrow. Yes? Han Dong took the elevator back to the ground. When he breathed in the fresh air from the ground again, an unprecedented refreshing feeling filled his body. Although Han Dong could adapt to life in the old sewer, staying down there for a long time was not something an ordinary person could bear. When they passed through the graveyard, Han Dong's personal butler, a G, crawled out of the ground again. The residents of the great necropolis would be appointed as the lifelong butler of a trainee knight, but the butler would only be a guide, an introduction, and some basic assistance in daily life. A G brought out a zombie horse that was made of rotten flesh and bones from somewhere and used a strange language to communicate with the horse so that it could send Han Dong to the Adventurers Guild. When the horses left the dark moon forest, the gloomy feeling disappeared. At the same time, Han Dong also changed into the bird's beak costume, covering his whole body with a mask and robe to hide his identity. The so-called Adventurers Guild was set up at the intersection of the Academy's central street. The huge building was a perfect combination of brass and stone. There was a huge metal plaque hanging on the door, and there were 2 emblems printed on it. The first one was a knight's emblem of 2 swords crossed above a white horse's head. The second one was a bounty permit emblem of a dagger inserted in the center of a bounty list. This emblem was issued by the Royal Parliament. Only the guild, church, or local organization that was granted this emblem had the right to issue bounties to trainee knight. The guild building had 7 floors, but each floor was 10 meters high. It was the largest and most imposing building on the central street. Every day, when there was a new batch of trainee knights, there would be a large number of trainee knights waiting at the door. After all, trainee knights in the development stage were short of money. Copper coins could not only buy some necessities. In special markets and special trading areas one could buy some magic items. There were even people who sold items from the Destiny realm. And these special items were very expensive. Mystic Scholar. Hello. Are you interested in joining our team to complete a 2-star mission? The targets are 2 ordinary gargoyles. We need to move at night. Han Dong's standard bird beak doctor costume was extraordinary. He was an elite student of the Mystic Academy. As soon as he got off the horse, he received an invitation from a strong man draped in animal skin. Sorry, I have an appointment with a friend. Han Dong simply declined and stepped into the hall of the Adventurers Guild. At present, there were more than 100 people gathered here. Some were choosing a mission on the bulletin board, and some had chosen a mission and were temporarily recruiting team members here. Han Dong, who was walking toward the stairs, paused midway. Han Dong had only been at the Night Academy for a week, and he stayed in the old sewer all day long. There were very few people who knew him, but now he found a familiar face. Mia Semenovich. At a round table in the corner, Han Dong found a girl of the same grade as him. She was a combat girl who passed the school exam with a score of 93. On the eve of the tutor selection, Mia took the initiative to distribute ointment to the other injured trainee knights, which left a good impression on Han Dong. She came to the Adventurers Guild to complete a mission soon after school started. Maybe she received 2 fate points from the newbie event like me. While Mia was chatting with her companions, she felt someone's gaze on her and immediately looked toward the stairs. However, Han Dong had already turned his head and left along the stairs. Due to the bird beak costume, she could not see through Han Dong's identity. Mystic Scholar? Which senior is it? Mia did not think too much and continued chatting with her companions. To be able to open a private room in the Adventurers Guild, it seems that Cass's identity is slightly different from ordinary trainee knights. Han Dong came to the Adventurers Lounge on the 2nd floor. He reached out and knocked on the door. Unexpectedly, the door opened immediately, and a strong arm reached out and grabbed Han Dong's neck, forcefully dragging him in. Brother and War. Long time no see. I missed you so much. How have you been recently? A top student like you must be having a good time in the mystery branch, right? Haha. Cass was too enthusiastic. He directly pulled Han Dong to the chair beside him and maintained a shoulder-to-shoulder posture throughout the whole process. He carefully asked about Han Dong's recent situation. This scene made the other girl in the team, Faya, pout. Jealousy was almost printed on her face. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.